A mother consumed by an incurable disease, a father whose heart is a frozen wasteland, and a sister drifting toward rebellion. This is the recipe for a collapsing family, destined for a brutal bad end. But destiny has a new player. I, Rid Baldia, have been reincarnated into this world, and I refuse to let that tragedy unfold. By living with integrity, I will save my family from their doom. Armed with knowledge of the future and a heart full of resolve, this young boy makes a silent vow. He will rewrite the stars and change the fate of everyone around him. But before the magic and the nobility, there was the mundane grind of corporate life. This is Hajime Kanda, an exhausted salaryman just trying to steal a few moments of peace at his desk. Only sanctuary is the world of gaming. A 33-year-old with a passion for anime and otome games, Hajime is a completionist who doesn't stop until every single secret is uncovered, even if it means gaming all night and neglecting his health. The toll of overwork and sleepless nights finally becomes too much. As he collapses on a city street, his consciousness fades, and the fleeting image of his late mother is the last thing he sees. His body has finally reached its absolute limit. Then, he opens his eyes to a world he doesn't recognize. An unfamiliar ceiling, a strange bed. The last thing he remembers is the blur of a traffic light before everything went black. A glance in the mirror reveals a shocking truth. He's been transformed into a tiny child. Before he can even scream, a maid bursts into the room, calling him Rid-sama with frantic concern. Surrounded by unfamiliar faces, he learns from the butler, Garn, that he had collapsed in the garden. In a moment of instinctive politeness, he apologizes for causing them all such worry. His humble words leave the staff completely bewildered, as this behavior is unheard of for the young master. As Garn kindly asks him to drop the formalities, he can only spiral into confusion. What in the world is happening to him? A sudden, violent surge of memories crashes into his mind, leaving him gasping for air. He remembers being Kanda Hajime, an exhausted employee at a trading company, but now a new identity is claiming him. In a moment of shocking clarity, he realizes who he has become. Rid Baldia. The pieces fall into place with terrifying precision. This world, these surroundings, it's the otome game he played, Tokirella. But the realization is a bitter pill to swallow. He hasn't been reborn as a hero, but as a minor, villainous noble destined for a dark fate. Determined to get his bearings, Rid rings for a maid to gather information. He tries to play it cool, but a simple question about his age reveals a humbling truth. He's only 6 years old. It seems he has a long way to go before he can truly change his destiny. He quickly maps out his new reality. He's in the Magnolia Empire, born into the neutral Baldia Marcas household. With a father working in the capital and a family caught in the middle of noble politics, there is no doubt. He is truly trapped in the world of Tokirella. When Rid tries to be polite, the maid's reaction is immediate and visceral. She flinches in genuine fear. Her terror is a wake-up call. It's clear that the original Rid was a nightmare to those around him. When sensing the rift, Rid offers a sincere apology for his past behavior, catching the maid completely off guard. Her fear melts into pure adoration as she learns his kindness, and she introduces herself as Danae, now utterly charmed by the new Rid. The next morning begins with a cheerful wake-up call from Danae. While he tries to remain composed, Rid finds himself internally mesmerized by her maid outfit, desperately struggling to hide his blush from her curious gaze. The grandeur of the noble life is on full display at breakfast, but the massive dining table only emphasizes his isolation. With his father away in the imperial capital and his mother bedridden, the silence of the room is deafening. Driven by a sudden impulse, Rid decides it's time to check on his mother. As Danae leads him through the halls, Rid ponders the mystery of his mother, Nunnally Baldia. In the game, she was a nameless shadow, a character who barely existed in the narrative. He wonders what kind of person she truly is. But as they reach her door, an instinctive dread washes over him, as if his very soul is rejecting the room. Danae reveals a heartbreaking detail. The original Rid had been avoiding his sick mother for a long time. With a trembling hand, he knocks, and a voice from within invites him in. A warm, gentle smile greets him. His mother, frail but radiating love, welcomes him with open arms, telling Rid how happy she is that he came to visit. Suddenly, a tidal wave of raw emotion crashes over Rid. He's left breathless and trembling, completely blindsided by a surge of feelings he can't even begin to explain. Panicked, Rid rushes to her side as she is seized by a coughing fit. Despite her own illness, she worries for him, having heard he collapsed in the garden. In a tender moment, they clasp hands, and Rid assures her that he is fine. He's just glad to be with her. With a bright, determined smile, Rid declares his pride in being the son of the Marquis and his parents. As he prepares to leave, promising to return soon, his mind turns toward Garn, seeking answers to the mystery of his mother's health. Rid doesn't let up, pressing Garn for the truth about his mother's condition. Despite the man's initial reluctance to speak, Rid's unwavering seriousness finally breaks through the silence. The truth is finally revealed, and it's devastating. Mana deficiency syndrome. The words hang heavy in the air, leaving Rid stunned by the gravity of the diagnosis. Arn explains the cruel nature of the disease, a failure of the body to regenerate its life energy, essentially acting as an incurable death sentence. Rid recognizes the symptoms immediately. It's a status condition from the game Tokirella. Determined to find a way, he heads to the study to dig deeper into the archives. While searching for answers, Rid is interrupted by a small hesitant presence. It's his little sister, Melody, looking at him with wide, hopeful eyes. Instead of pushing her away, Rid greets her with kindness, inviting her to stay and offering to read her a picture book. Melody's face lights up with pure joy as she leaps into his arms. The two bond over a whimsical tale of princesses and golden apples, a rare moment of peace and sibling affection. But as he looks at her, fragmented memories resurface. Rid remembers the pure happiness he felt when Melody was born, and the subsequent darkness that followed when their mother fell ill. In his childhood grief and anxiety, he had pushed Melody away, directing his anger at the one person who needed him most just to protect his own breaking heart. Once, a cold wall of silence stood between the siblings, leaving them unable to even share a meal. But now, the ice is melting. A playful Melody warns her brother about sleeping in the garden, her pride beaming as she shows off how smart she is. In a tender moment of trust, Melody offers Rid a special privilege. She tells him he can call her Mel, a nickname reserved only for their mother. And now for him, because he's special. The peace is short-lived, as Melody drifts off to sleep right against him. As a maid arrives to assist, Rid is spotted by a stern man in glasses, who questions if he's been spending time with the young lady. The man's voice softens with approval, praising Rid for his kindness and urging him to continue caring for Melody. A warm smile crosses Rid's face. The bond with his little sister is becoming something truly precious. However, the change in Rid hasn't gone unnoticed. The man points out that since his collapse in the garden, he seems like a completely different person. Rid is momentarily flustered, realizing that his efforts to live honestly are visibly rewriting his reputation. Alone in his study, the weight of the future returns. In the original game, Rid was nothing more than a villain's accomplice, destined for condemnation, exile, or a brutal execution. He stares at his desk with a grim resolve. He must avoid that fate at all costs. He drafts a plan to befriend those doomed to tragedy, but the scale of the task is overwhelming. Since he's far from the Imperial capital, he realizes he can't rely on the main characters. He must hone his own strength, and more importantly, find a way to earn money. As he reflects on the original Rid's broken heart, he feels a deep empathy for the child who suffered in silence. He concludes that the collapse of their family was rooted in their mother's illness, and restoring those bonds is the only way to secure a peaceful life. Haunting memories of a different timeline flicker through his mind. The image of a smiling mother, followed by her heartbreaking apologies on her deathbed, and finally, the cold rain of a funeral. The pain of that regret is a scar he refuses to let happen again. With a fierce determination igniting in his eyes, Rid slams his book shut. He won't let history repeat itself. He will gather every piece of information, find every possible treatment, and save his mother no matter what it takes. Meet Rid Baldia. With his silver hair and purple eyes, he may look like just another pretty young boy, but he's hiding a secret weapon. An incredible high-spec ability to memorize every single word of any book he reads. Rid spends his days immersed in the library, discovering that many of the plants and gems in this world mirror those from his previous life. His peaceful study is interrupted when a butler informs him that Reinver Sama has finally returned. Today is the day. Rid prepares himself for his first meeting with his father, Marquis Rainer Baldia, since his reincarnation. With a nervous heart, he enters the office to face the imposing man waiting for him. The atmosphere is tense as Rainer asks about Rid's health following a recent collapse in the garden. After assuring his father he's fine, Rid wastes no time and reveals he has two important requests. First, Rid asks to study magic and martial arts. He knows from the game that while this character starts with abysmal stats, he has the potential to master all magic attributes. A high-risk, high-reward challenge run that Rid is eager to tackle. Surprised by the request, Rainer admits he had considered it, but hesitated due to Rid's fragile state. But seeing the determination in his son's eyes, Rid declares his true motive. He wants to become strong enough to help his mother. With the tutors agreed upon, Rid moves to his second request, a discretionary fund to bring his ideas for new products to life. Rainer is skeptical, questioning why he should sponsor a child who hasn't even prepared a formal proposal. A gamble. But Rid bets everything on his enthusiasm and the bond between father and son. To his delight, the gamble pays off, and Rainer agrees to provide the funds. But Rid isn't finished yet. He has one more favor to ask. Rid suggests that the family start eating together, lamenting that neither he nor his sister Melody speak with their father enough. Rainer seems taken aback, promising to think about the request. In a sudden, heartwarming turn, Rainer addresses Melody, asking if he can call her Mel as well. The gesture leaves the young girl completely stunned as the family gathers around the dining table, slowly beginning to bridge the gap between them. Little Mel is as spirited as ever, insisting that only their mother and brother can call her by her nickname. Meanwhile, Rid makes a formal request to his father to inspect the family territory, a request that is granted with a simple order to prepare the carriage. Accompanied by his loyal knight escorts, Rubens and Diana, Rid sets off for the Valdias territory. Known as the borderland due to its distance from the capital, the land is flourishing with cultivation, specifically the olive groves his father decided to plant. As they approach the largest city in the territory, Rid's mind is racing. This trip isn't just for sightseeing. With the funds provided by his father, he has a very specific goal in mind. A bustling atmosphere of the city is a stark contrast to the quiet countryside. While Diana and Rubens keep a close eye on him, Rid leads the way with a mischievous smile, heading straight for a particular destination. They arrive at the headquarters of the Christie Company, where they're greeted by a cheerful, cat-eared maid. Rid reveals he's already been in contact with the owner, having sent a letter a few days prior. Entering the office, they meet Christy Saffron, the only elf in the territory, and a formidable businesswoman. Just as Garn had described, she is a key figure in the region's commerce. Once settled in the guest room, Rid makes a surprising request. He asks his bodyguards to wait outside. He wants this conversation to remain strictly confidential. Rid cuts straight to the chase, asking Christy if she's ever heard of skin lotion or hair conditioner. This curiosity stems from a few days ago, when Rid was researching local flora, and discovered that aloe exists in this world too. He recalls trying to explain the concept of skincare to his maid, Danae, who was completely baffled. Realizing that aloe grows right around the mansion, and the territory is full of olive fields, a brilliant business opportunity begins to take shape in his mind. Drawing on memories of videos from his previous life, Rid plans to create luxury skincare prototypes to trade with the nobility. Christie confirms that such products are non-existent in this world, giving Rid the perfect opening to dominate the market. Rid reveals the prototypes he's been working on, leaving Chris completely stunned. She's eager to try the product, and Rid is more than happy to let her. One application is all it takes for Chris to be absolutely floored by the quality. Overjoyed that her dry skin problems are finally solved, she practically begs Rid to bring this product to market. The two strike a deal, with Chris insisting on commercializing the lotion under her own company. Rid takes it a step further, asking her to source rare ingredients for a medicine to treat mana deficiency. Chris recalls her initial disbelief at receiving a business proposal from a child, but now she sees Rid's terrifying potential. Having built her own company to escape her family's shadow, she's ready to dive into this new venture. While the partnership is a huge win, Rid can't afford to relax. The looming threat of banishment and execution keeps him focused on one goal, earning enough money to survive on his own. During his travels, Rid notices a young lady in a hooded cloak who looks completely lost and distressed. Moved by her plight, he steps forward to offer his help. The girl reveals she's from a Marquis family and has been separated from her companions. With a gentle smile, Rid offers to guide her back to safety. Once reunited, the girl is overwhelmed by Rid's sincerity and chivalry. As he humbly brushes off the gesture, she finds herself completely captivated by the young noble. Upon returning home, it's revealed that the girl is actually a princess. As she settles back into her luxurious surroundings, her mind is far from the palace. The princess is completely love-struck, kicking herself for not asking the mysterious boy's name. Meanwhile, Rid's companion can't help but wonder why Rid didn't do the same. Exhausted, Rid falls fast asleep, leaning comfortably against a companion. As they make their way back to the mansion, the others can't help but admire how adorable he looks in his slumber. The peace is short-lived, as Rid is soon informed that his personal tutor has arrived. Enter Sandra, a woman with a sharp gaze and a confident smile, who announces she will be the one to guide him through the mysteries of magic. Among the household staff is Emma, the devoted servant and bodyguard to Chris, blending a cute appearance with a hidden strength. After formal introductions, Sandra is practically vibrating with excitement to begin. While she believes Rid possesses the rare potential to master every single element, Rid admits he's a complete novice who has only ever read about magic in books. Wendra dives straight into the theory, explaining that magic requires refining one's internal life force into mana. With an overflowing passion, she vows to guide Rid through every grueling step of the process. To give him a real taste of power, Sandra leads Rid to the training grounds. Her sheer enthusiasm for the craft is infectious, and as they reach the open courtyard, she prepares to show him what true magic looks like. With a sudden, powerful surge of energy, Sandra unleashes a devastating spell. Sphere of flames, fireball, she cries as a massive explosion of fire erupts, shaking the very ground. Rid is completely awestruck by the display of power, shouting his admiration and calling her Sandra-sensei. The sudden title catches the tutor off guard, leaving her flustered and blushing. Andra explains that while masters can cast spells without chanting by visualizing them perfectly, Rid must first master the basics. Fired up and determined, Rid is ready to dive into the challenge of creating his own mana. However, the reality of training hits hard, and Rid finds himself struggling, fearing he might lack the necessary talent. Noticing his frustration, Sandra offers a mysterious trick to help him convert mana, though the look in her eyes gives Rid a very bad feeling about what's to come. Andra-sensei takes a direct approach to training, gripping Rid's hand as sparks of energy surge through him. The intensity is overwhelming, leaving Rid terrified that his very body might break under the pressure. As the energy drains from his palms, Rid feels a strange, shocking sensation coursing through him. He quickly realizes that his teacher isn't just training him, she's absolutely loving every second of his struggle. The session ends with Rid collapsed in exhaustion, feeling as though he's just survived a torture session. Sandra-sensei casually explains that this forced mana conversion awareness is simply a shortcut to help him recognize the flow of mana. Despite calling her a sadist, Rid follows her guidance, learning to locate his mana source and compress it. For the first time, he can actually feel the power stirring deep within him. With mana now under his control, Sandra-sensei pushes him further, instructing him to channel the energy into his fist. By visualizing the fireball she demonstrated earlier, Rid prepares to unleash his first spell. With a determined shout, Rid launches a massive fireball toward the target. The sheer power of the blast catches even Sandra-sensei completely off guard. Overjoyed by his success, Rid can't believe he actually did it. Sandra-sensei is genuinely impressed, noting that mastering both conversion and casting on the first day is a feat only a genius could achieve. Riding the high of his discovery, Rid pushes himself further, successfully casting multiple fireballs, some even without chanting. He only stops when he completely drains his mana pool, leaving him breathless and spent. Transitioning to the library, Sandra-sensei explains the fundamentals of mana recovery and the distinction between attribute and special magic. Rid can't help but note that the world lacks the convenient recovery items he remembers from the game. Inspired by the endless possibilities of magic, Rid vows to give it his all. But as he loses himself in his studies, someone else is searching for him, calling out his name. Rid starts his training session with some peculiar stretching exercises, leaving the knight Rubens completely baffled. While gymnastics is a foreign concept in this world, Rid knows that preparing his body is the first step to overcoming the poor reflexes of his past life. Impressed by the boy's natural aptitude, Rubens doesn't waste time and suggests a bit of sparring. With a confident smile, the knight invites Rid to attack him however he likes. Rid lunges forward with unexpected speed and precision, catching Rubens completely off guard. As their blades clash, Rid is stunned by the sheer efficiency of his own movements. Everything feels effortless. His body is light, and the thrill of the sword is intoxicating. It becomes clear that the original Rid possessed monstrous physical stats, giving this reincarnated soul a talent that borders on the supernatural. As the session ends, Rubens is left in awe, predicting that Rid might one day surpass even Rainer-sama. But as Rid looks at the defeated knight, a mischievous idea forms. He decides to bring up Rubens' childhood friend, Diana. With a sly grin, Rid strikes where it hurts most, Rubens' heart. He teases the knight about his secret feelings for Diana, calling him a coward for being too afraid to confess. Psychological blow is too much, leaving Rubens utterly shattered. Just as Rid begins to worry if he's pushed the joke too far, the woman of the hour, Diana, arrives on the scene. Diana finds the situation amusingly typical of Rubens' fragile nature, but her curiosity is piqued. When Rid honestly tells her that Rubens is just a coward when it comes to her, the air around them suddenly turns ice cold. In an instant, Diana's sweet demeanor vanishes, replaced by a terrifying demonic aura that sends shivers down Rid's spine. While Rubens is left trembling in confusion, Diana makes it very clear that she and Rid will be having a long talk later. With a chilling smile, Diana whisks Rid away, leaving a bewildered Rubens behind. In one stroke of mischief, Rid has learned a valuable lesson: never mess with a woman's heart, and definitely keep Diana at the top of his danger list. Rid spends his free time reading picture books to his little sister, Mel, who is absolutely captivated by his expressive storytelling. While he's glad she enjoys it, he can't help but feel a bit of pressure, fearing her disappointment if he stops putting on a performance. Even his mother is impressed, praising Rid's natural talent for acting. Not wanting to be left out, Mel quickly demands her own share of the praise, earning a tender pat on the head from their mother. But behind these warm family moments lies a grim reality. Rid's mother suffers from mana deficiency, a fatal disease kept secret from most of the Badlia family. As she waves goodbye with a smile, Rid can't ignore how awfully pale she has become. Shifting his focus to the future, Rid meets with Chris, who brings exciting news about the commercialization of their skin lotion and conditioner. Everything is progressing smoothly, from the raw materials to the factories. As they discuss ramping up production, Chris suggests a strategic approach, educating the public on healthcare and the differences between skin types. Rid is genuinely stunned by how much professional knowledge she possesses. Rid isn't taking any chances with quality or imitations. He outlines a meticulous 3-step plan involving customer service, store management, and a distinct brand logo using the Badlia family crest to ensure their success. To tie it all together, Rid makes a bold proposal. He wants Chris to be the face of the brand. Though shocked at first, she's met with Rid's absolute confidence that she is the perfect choice for the poster girl. A few days prior, Rid's father had suggested presenting these products to the imperial couple. Rather than going himself, Rid decides to entrust the mission to Chris, believing her elegance makes her far more suited for the role than a young boy. Rid's logic is simple. If the imperial court sees how beautiful Chris is, they'll be desperate for the products she uses. With his father's approval, the plan is set. But before they part, Chris reveals she has something special for him. Moonlight grass, a rare medicinal plant Rid had specifically asked her to find. Looking at the flower, Rid feels a surge of hope. If he can process this correctly, he might finally be able to delay the advance of his mother's illness. The woman expresses her deep gratitude, urging the young man to raise his head. While the elusive root grass has yet to be found, she asks for his patience a little longer. Meanwhile, several days pass, and Rid's father and Chris depart for the capital to present their latest product to the imperial couple. Rid is determined to create a mana potion from moonlight grass to serve as a temporary cure for his mother. However, he hits a wall. He knows nothing about pharmacology. Seeing his struggle, his attendant suggests he seek the expertise of someone named Sandra. Rid brings the mysterious plant to Sandra, explaining that it is a medicinal herb with the rare ability to restore mana. Andra is absolutely stunned, recognizing the plant as the legendary moonlight grass. She reveals her past as a director of a research lab in the capital, where she spent years researching mana potions. In the capital, Sandra's brilliance and passion for magic earned her the position of director over a team of elite mages. But as they worked toward a mana potion, strange discrepancies began to appear in their supplies. With a deadline looming, Sandra is forced to scramble and alter her formulas due to the missing materials. But the pressure isn't just professional. She is met with coldness and suspicion from those around her. The nobility looked down on her, viewing her as a mere rat in their world. They despised her for prioritizing talent over social status when hiring her staff, turning her professional struggle into a social nightmare. When the research failed and her staff abandoned her, Sandra took the fall and resigned. The fallout was brutal. Her own family disowned her to save their reputation, leaving her completely isolated and broken. Just as she reached her lowest point, Marquise Raynor extended a hand, offering her a new beginning as a tutor. It was this act of kindness that brought her to where she is now. Rid feels a pang of guilt, realizing he's asking Sandra to revisit the very research that caused her downfall. But his desperation for his mother, who suffers from mana deficiency, outweighs his hesitation. He begs for her help, hoping to create a potion that can buy his mother more time. With a look of earnest desperation, the young boy turns to Sandra, pleading for her expertise. He needs her help to create a mana potion, a task that requires a level of skill only she possesses. Having a chance to repay a favor and a drive to save Nunali-sama, Sandra agrees without hesitation. A firm handshake seals the deal, marking the start of a crucial collaboration. Andra is absolutely fired up, already planning a research lab and leveraging the Christie Company. However, she recalls the struggle of obtaining moonlight grass, a key ingredient that proved nearly impossible to secure at the capital's research lab. Suddenly, a thought of Rid-sama flashes through her mind. With a smug, playful grin, Sandra sets the ground rules. He can call her Sandra in private, but during their lessons, she is Sandra-sensei. The boy can't help but smile at her sudden burst of confidence. As the boy looks out the window, his thoughts drift to his father and Chris, wondering if they are struggling. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the capital, where a young elf girl looks on with a troubled expression. In the heights of luxury, a noblewoman admires the quality of certain skin lotions and conditioners, wondering if the rights to produce them could be sold to the Magnolia Empire. Below her, the elf girl suddenly cries out, calling for Rid-sama. Raynor and Christie are finally nearing the capital. Raynor gives a stern warning, urging Christie to be extremely careful with her attitude, for the capital is a fearsome place where even a marquis is but a pawn. But Christie is far from intimidated. She sees this as a rare golden opportunity for a merchant, while her cat-eared companion is equally thrilled. As they approach, the massive fortress city reveals itself, sprawling across the landscape. Christie gazes upon the sight in awe, struck by its enduring grandeur. From above, the scale of the city is truly overwhelming. A colossal network of walls, a towering central castle, and a winding river all converge to create a bastion of power and wealth. Magnolia Empire's capital is a city of layers, with the noble quarters protected by high walls and a moat, separated from the common town by further fortifications. While Rainer has already pushed ahead, the others wait for their carriage inspection, with the elf girl noting that even her own capital isn't this immense. Just as they approach the castle, the group is halted by Imperial guards demanding a thorough inspection of their belongings. However, a blond man steps forward with an air of authority, vouching for the group's trustworthiness. Intimidated or convinced, the guards step aside and allow them to pass, overwhelming. As they walk through the corridors, the man explains that those guards are puppets of Count Roland, likely sent to spy on their goods. While the blonde girl apologizes for the commotion, he gently takes the blame, unaware that they are about to run into the source of the trouble himself. Right on cue, Count Roland Galliano appears with a greasy smile and a fake greeting. He quickly turns his attention to the blonde girl, masking his true intentions with superficial compliments about her beauty. A mask slips instantly as Roland begins spewing venom, mocking the girl for rumors of being disinherited and calling her a shrew. He doesn't stop there, casting a derogatory glance at the cat girl beside her, cruelly referring to her as a beast who simply sticks with her own kind. Insults to herself are nothing. But hearing Emma being degraded sends the blonde girl into a silent rage. Her fist clenches tight. She may tolerate slights against her own name, but she will not stand by while her friend is insulted. Before things escalate, the blonde man interjects with a freezing tone, warning the Count that his jest has gone far too far. Terrified by the man's presence and the mention of the imperial majesties, Roland quickly cowers and retreats. Once alone, the man dismisses the Count as a sleazebag obsessed with money and power. The blonde girl, Christie, tenderly comforts Emma, assuring her she did nothing wrong. But beneath her kindness, a business decision has already been made. Count Roland is now permanently banned from trading with the Christie Company. Their moment of peace is short-lived as a maid arrives to announce that their audience has begun. And they enter the breathtaking audience hall, a sea of gathered nobles watching as they approach the center of power. There, seated upon their magnificent thrones, are the rulers of the land, Emperor Arwen Magnolia and Empress Consort Matilda Magnolia. Rainer Baldia formally announces his arrival before the throne. Beside him, Christie and Emma bow deeply, with Christie introducing herself not just as a merchant, but as the daughter of Baron Martin Saffron of the Astoria Kingdom. The revelation of her noble title leaves the Emperor intrigued and sends Count Roland into a panic. Realizing he just insulted a baron's daughter, Rainer seizes the moment to deliver a subtle cutting jab at the Count's lack of respect. With the tension peaking, the Empress finally speaks, asking to see the items they've brought. Lady Christie presents her new beauty products, immediately capturing the attention of the Empress and her female court. While the men remain indifferent, the women are captivated by the promise of elegance. One touch is all it takes. The Empress is mesmerized by the silky smoothness of Lady Christie's hair, quickly becoming intrigued by the secret behind such radiance. Count Roland attempts to intervene, warning of the dangers, but he is swiftly and coldly silenced by the Empress. She has no interest in his opinion, only in the luxury before her. Completely won over, the Empress declares the products to be among the finest gifts she has ever received. But while Lady Christie is honored, not everyone in the room is pleased. The atmosphere shifts instantly. With a calculating smile, the Empress makes a bold demand. She wants the recipe and production rights for the Magnolia Empire. Panic sets in as Lady Christie tries to refuse, but the Empress's power is absolute. She reminds her that Marquis Rainer, a subject of the Empire, cannot simply say no. Just as the situation turns dire, Rid steps in with a perfectly timed intervention. He doesn't plead. Instead, he presents a cold hard business reality. Steal the rights, and you lose the merchants and the economy. With a clever compromise, Rid offers the Empress the right of first access and a guaranteed supply. It's a win-win that protects his assets while flattering the imperial ego. The Empress, recognizing the logic and the risk of economic decline, gracefully accepts. She realizes that forced seizure would only drive innovation away from her capital. Victory. The production rights are officially secured for the Christie Company and the Baldia territory. As the court recovers from the shock, Lady Christie can only wonder how this tense standoff ended so smoothly. A sudden, jarring realization hits Chris. As she looks at the confident smiles of the nobility, the truth dawns on her. This entire sequence of events was meticulously planned from the very beginning. The pieces fall into place. The goal wasn't the recipe or production rights, but simply securing the luxury skin lotion for personal use. Chris feels a sting of humiliation, realizing she was nothing more than a powerless pawn in a high-stakes game of capital politics. Completely drained, Chris collapses onto a sofa, seeking a moment of peace with her companion. But the respite is short-lived. A sudden announcement reveals that the Emperor and Empress have arrived, snapping her back into a state of high alert. The imperial couple enters with an air of grace and authority. The Emperor offers a sincere apology, acknowledging that Lady Christie was unwittingly dragged into their complex schemes. The Empress explains the necessity of their ruse. With rumors of the Baldia territory's wonderful products spreading, greedy nobles were already circling like vultures for exclusive rights. The charade was the only way to keep those opportunistic nobles in check. With Chris's production rights now officially recognized, she is shielded from the whims of the nobility. The Empress is so impressed by her that she openly wishes Chris were her lady-in-waiting, before turning her attention back to the Emperor for a private matter. Without missing a beat, Empress Matilda pivots to a new, urgent topic, the first delivery rights. Her sudden burst of energy catches Chris off guard as the Empress reveals a diplomatic dilemma involving a foreign country's desire to marry into the imperial family. The Empress's eyes glint with a mischievous plan. She points out a glaring gap in the family's arrangements. Rainer's son is the only one currently without a suitable fiancé. As the present fades into a weary haze, a dream emerges. A vision of the old Rid appears, a small, innocent boy running through a garden, calling out for his mother with pure, unfiltered joy. In this tender memory, young Rid discovers a butterfly, eager to keep it. His mother gently teaches him a lesson about freedom and the fragility of life, explaining that living creatures cannot be kept in cages, leaving the young boy puzzled by the concept of death. In a heartbreaking conversation, a mother explains the concept of death to young Rid, describing it as disappearing forever. Overwhelmed with fear, the boy tearfully asks if she will be gone too, but she gently reassures him with a promise that she will always be by his side. Walking alone, Rid reflects on that promise, feeling a wave of nostalgia for his previous life when he, too, was just a boy who loved catching insects. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Mel comes charging in, tackling him with an explosion of energy. Beaming with pride, Mel shows off a tiny bird she caught in the garden. Rid is genuinely impressed by her find, calling it amazing and cute, while Mel eagerly begs him for permission to keep the little creature. Looking at his sister, Rid can't help but notice how she's a perfect blend of him and their mother. He smiles, certain that their mother would understand Mel's innocent desire to protect the bird. However, Rid knows the importance of family. He gently explains that the bird's parents must be searching for it, suggesting they let it go. This sparks a deep question from Mel. What does it actually mean to be alive? Under the brilliance of the midday sun, Rid takes his sister's hand. With a patient smile, he begins to guide her through the complexities of life and existence. But while the children find joy in the moment, their mother faces a silent, agonizing struggle. She describes her illness as a slow leak, like water dripping from a cracked glass, gradually draining the very essence of her life until she could no longer even stand. The weight of her impending death cast a dark shadow over the entire household. She remembers the despair of those days, Mel's endless tears and Rid's sudden, violent outbursts as he struggled to cope with the tragedy. Yet, recently, something has changed. Rid has grown remarkably calm and mature, stepping up to guide the family toward a brighter future. Seeing Mel's happiness and her bond with her brother gives her a newfound sense of hope. With a determined gaze and a smile of defiance, Nunnally vows that she will not be defeated. For the sake of her children, she refuses to give up, declaring her absolute will to beat the disease and survive. Waking up from a peaceful nap under the sun, Rid is suddenly struck by a wave of guilt. While his father and Chris are working tirelessly, he's been slacking off, prompting him to resolve to get serious and test his magical attributes, just like in the game. This world is nearly identical to the game Tokirella, but Rid is already carving a path the original character never took. Motivated by the new possibilities opening up before him, he decides to systematically test his powers, starting with the element of fire. With a focused effort, he summons towering shards of ice that erupt from the ground. It's a stunning confirmation. He truly possesses the rare ability to wield every single magical attribute. To make casting easier, he decides to name his spells based on simple intuitive images, like Flame Spear and Lightning Spear. He's not just practicing for power, he's preparing himself to handle any sudden attack that might come his way. Flame Spear. With a determined shout, he unleashes a devastating blast of fire, the sheer force of the attack tearing through the environment in a brilliant explosion. Just as he thinks he's finished his secret training, a familiar voice rings out. He turns in shock to find Mel watching him with wide sparkling eyes. She's seen every single bit of it. Terrified that this discovery will make him stand out too much, Rid desperately bribes his little sister with the promise of reading her favorite picture book. While Mel is simply amazed and wants to see more, Rid is preoccupied with the danger of the spotlight. A few days later, a letter arrives from Chris in the capital, but the news is alarming. Between a volatile empress and political betrayals, Rid realizes he might be in deep trouble, just as it's time for his lessons to begin. During his studies, Rid's tutor introduces the concept of special aptitude for casting high-level magic. When she explains that anyone can potentially produce their own special magic through enough practice, Rid's eyes light up with a new ambition. However, the tutor warns that special magic requires a flawless mental image and a massive reservoir of mana. Whether creating it from scratch or inheriting it from a master, the requirements are steep, but the potential power is undeniable. The researcher is absolutely thrilled by the discovery that moonlight grass has mana restorative properties. In her sudden burst of excitement, she completely forgets about their lessons and dashes off to start working on prototypes, leaving a bewildered Rid behind. Left alone as a storm begins to roll in, Rid's mind wanders to his own magical growth. He wonders if there's a way to accurately measure his mana, or if he could even create his own original spells. The rain quickly turns into a heavy downpour, forcing Rid to race back home. The moment he arrives drenched to the bone, the maids erupt in a panic, frantically rushing to prepare a hot bath and towels for him. Despite his protests, the maids insist he warm up properly. Haunted by the memory of his previous collapse in the garden, they practically drag him away to a tub that has been specially brought right into his room. Inking into the steaming water, Rid feels a wave of pure bliss. He reflects on how true luxury this is, noting that in this world, most people simply wipe themselves down with warm cloths instead of taking a full bath. He relaxes. He begins thinking about the amount of hot water used and the units of measurement, realizing that grams, liters, and meters are the same as in his previous world. A brilliant idea suddenly clicks into place. Armed with a specific measuring cup and a plan, Rid heads to a secluded spot outdoors. With a confident smile, he prepares to put his new theory into practice. Using a cup that holds exactly 1 liter, Rid begins to manifest water with his magic. By filling and emptying it repeatedly, he creates a precise new spell he calls 1 liter. He doesn't stop at a few tries. He repeats the process single-mindedly, hundreds of times over. He pushes himself through a grueling cycle of repetition until he's nearly out of mana. With absolute focus and determination, Rid continues to refine his control. He is no longer just casting a spell. He is mastering the very precision of his power. Through a series of meticulous tests, Rid discovers a way to quantify his power. By treating magic like a measurable liquid, he successfully creates a unique special spell, Mana Measurement, designed to display numerical mana values. Eager to test his creation, Rid activates the spell and is amazed to see a voice in his head announce his personal mana as 80. After a brief moment of uncertainty, he decides to try it once more to be sure. It works. Seeing his mana drop to 60 confirms that the spell costs 20 units to cast. With this new tool, Rid is confident he can now precisely verify the effects of the mana restorative he plans to give his mother. Walking back toward the mansion under the glow of a full moon, Rid feels a surge of accomplishment. He's no longer just following a script. He's taking another decisive step forward in shaping his own future. When Rid explains his breakthrough to Sandra, the researcher is completely floored. She can't wrap her head around his unconventional logic, questioning how on earth he managed to conceive such an idea. Rid simply explains that he based the spell on the concept of measuring water. While Sandra is impressed by his aptitude, she quickly turns serious, warning him that if the authorities found out about this spell, he'd be forced to work in the capital. Confused by the warning, Rid asks why. Sandra explains the stark reality of their world. Producing mana is a rare ability, and those with the refined control Rid possesses are seen as anomalies, either geniuses or incredibly hard workers. Rid realizes that in this world, magic isn't a common part of daily life, but a specialized tool reserved for the army, adventurers, and researchers. Coming from another world, he can't help but feel that such a powerful resource is being wasted. Sandra calls him a mold-breaking prodigy, admitting that even she couldn't create such a spell without the specific water attribute. Intrigued, Rid wonders why Sandra herself isn't being forced to work in the capital. With a knowing smirk, Sandra reveals the truth. She doesn't have to be forced. She was already chosen as a director of a research lab in the capital. Wonder-sensei isn't shy about her brilliance, boasting of her status as a genius summoned to the capital even if she was quickly ousted by the jealousy of others. While she claims she'll always stay by Rid's side, her slip of the tongue reveals her true motive. She sees him as the ultimate research subject. Rid tries to keep their dealings a secret, but that only fuels Sandra-sensei's eccentric passion. With a wild glint in her eye, She declares her intent to shatter every rule of common sense, leaving Rid absolutely terrified of the woman's intensity. Driven by the desire to help his mother, Rid commits himself to the grueling task of developing a mana restorative. The process involves tasting moonlit grass in various forms, raw, boiled, and dried, despite the plant being notoriously bitter and nearly inedible. With a look of grim determination, Rid pushes through the disgust. He bravely takes on the role of the guinea pig, tasting every iteration of the test products to find the most effective formula. Results are clear. Raw grass is barely tolerable, and the boiled version is an absolute nightmare. However, the dried powder emerges as the winner, offering the highest mana recovery, even if the taste remains wretched. Just as Rid thinks the worst is over, Sandra-sensei suggests an even more torturous method of consumption. Horrified by her demonic curiosity, Rid can only suffer in silence as she calculates the safest way to administer the powder. Finally, the mana potion is complete. While Rid feels a sense of accomplishment, he's quickly overwhelmed by Sandra-sensei's suffocating excitement, as she insists the potion was made with all her love. Rid is genuinely grateful for her help, but the mood shifts when Sandra-sensei drops a cryptic hint. She suggests that Melody might have some information for him, leaving Rid with a sinking feeling that something is off. Returning home, Rid's mood brightens the moment he spots his younger sister Melody. He greets her with a joyful smile, eager to reunite with his beloved sibling. The heartwarming reunion is short-lived. As Melody lunges for a hug, she immediately recoils in horror, screaming that he stinks. Left standing alone while the maids keep their distance, Rid realizes the true cost of his chemical experiments. After a long day, a stern attendant delivers a blunt truth to Rid. His clothes smell absolutely terrible. Rid takes the critique in stride, promising to clean up immediately, but the peace is shattered by a sudden, thunderous scream echoing through the night air. The next morning, a different kind of energy fills the air as Rubens leads a group of knights through a series of rhythmic radio calisthenics. Watching from above, Rid is surprised to see that the simple exercises he once practiced have now spread throughout the Knights' Order. Rubens isn't just a leader. He's a prodigy whose reflexes are said to be on par with Rid's own. Recalling their lessons, Rid realizes that Rubens had recognized the value of those warm-ups long ago, using them to sharpen his own incredible potential. Her training is far from gentle, with Rubens quickly flooring Rid to teach him a harsh lesson about losing focus in battle. But the mood shifts when Rubens mentions a new challenge: dungeon training, sparking an immediate and eager curiosity in young Rid. Rubens explains the dark nature of the world's dungeons. They aren't just caves, but living creatures that absorb mana to create entrances. By luring surface dwellers in with treasures, these dungeons feed on the lives of those foolish enough to enter. To stop them, one must venture into the deepest depths and destroy the hidden core, a dangerous task that often leaves explorers buried alive. Rid finds the concept fascinating, comparing the dungeon structure to an ant colony with a queen at its center. The lesson continues, as Rubens details the difference between the Knights' Order and the Adventurers' Guilds. While the Knights handle the heavy lifting of monster extermination, the guilds are filled with freelancers, taking on a variety of quests for reward. Rubens confidently vows to make Rid's sword skills top-notch, but the conversation takes a sudden, chaotic turn. With a mischievous glint in his eye, young Rid drops a bombshell. He tells Rubens to make sure he marries Diana. The suggestion sends Rubens into a spiral of denial, recalling how Diana often wakes him up, only to tell him she'll get married to someone else someday. He's convinced there's no way she could ever have romantic feelings for him. From her blunt denials about their relationship to the lunchboxes she claims are just practice for a future husband. Rubens lists every reason why he's in the friend zone. He's desperate to convince Rid of the truth, completely oblivious to how his stories sound to everyone else. Rid can't believe what he's hearing. Rubens is reminiscing about a childhood promise to protect Diana, but the girl pushing him forward isn't having any of his hesitation. She insists that he go to Diana and finally confess his feelings. Not one to let a potential romance with her, Rid steps in to give Rubens a much-needed wake-up call. He calls the knight spineless, urging him to stop being dense and actually think about the meaning behind Diana's words. The lecture works, and Rubens finally agrees to take action. Satisfied that he's successfully pushed them toward their destiny, Rid shares a light-hearted moment with his little sister Mel, though he keeps his matchmaking secrets to himself. Back in a place filled with nostalgia, Diana and Rubens find themselves alone. As she recalls the days they spent playing together as children, the tension between them reaches a breaking point, leaving Rubens completely flustered. It seems Rid's intervention paid off, as the two finally start dating. Watching from a distance, Rid can't help but feel they took the long way around. In his mind, they should have just jumped straight to marriage. Peace and quiet are short-lived for Rid, however. His mornings now begin with a literal crash as Mel bursts into his room, waking him up with an enthusiastic high-energy body slam. Despite her rigorous education in reading, manners, and dancing, Mel is still just a child at heart. Rid realizes that these chaotic wake-up calls are simply her way of seeking affection and skinship with her favorite older brother. The household grows lively again as Rid's father and Chris return from their travels. While Mel welcomes them with open arms, Chris looks absolutely exhausted, barely holding on after the grueling trip. It turns out the Imperial Majesty took such a liking to Chris that they spent the entire journey discussing business, leaving her no time to rest. After instructing Rid to ensure Chris gets some sleep in the guest room, his father summons him to the office. Atmosphere shifts as Rid enters his father's presence. Looking at his son with a gaze full of curiosity and scrutiny, his father asks the one question that confirms everything has changed. Rid, how? Did you change so much? Rid's father is not easily fooled. He's impressed by his son's unnatural composure, but he's also suspicious. From the offerings made to the imperial couple to the sheer impossibility of a child possessing such knowledge, the pressure is mounting. The demand is simple. Explain everything. Panic surges through Rid. How can he possibly explain the truth without sounding insane? He reflects on his existence, a fusion of a modern office worker and the memories of a doomed noble boy. He has become someone entirely new, but the truth is a dangerous gamble. Deciding on a partial truth, Rid opens up about the guilt he feels for the original Rid's coldness toward his sister and the maids. He speaks of a newfound respect for his father, and a desperate, burning desire to become stronger. A raw emotion peaks as he recalls the crushing despair of being powerless while his mother faded away. With a determined gaze, he makes a solemn vow. He will protect his mother and his family, no matter the cost. A heavy silence descends upon the room. Rid waits with bated breath, wondering if his confession has landed, or if he's just dug himself into a deeper hole. And the unthinkable happens. His father, the man of stone, offers a heartfelt apology. He admits he failed as a parent, assuming he knew his son's heart while never once actually trying to understand it. Overwhelmed by this sudden vulnerability, Rid can't hold back his tears. Once the air is cleared, he cautiously explains his secret, that he's used knowledge from a vivid, recurring dream to develop a mysterious medicine, a mana potion. The revelation leaves his father stunned. Rid reveals the scale of his operation, having coordinated with Chris to find rare moonlight grass and working with Sandra to bring the production to life, even inventing a special magic to measure the results. Rid warns that the potion is merely a stopgap and that a true cure is still needed. His father, now fully supportive, pledges his aid. But as the mood lightens, he calls for Garn to join them, signaling that the conversation is far from over. Then comes the bombshell that shatters Rid's peace. His marriage has already been decided. Not a proposal, not an interview. A full-blown marriage scheduled for just a few months from now. The news hits Rid like a thunderbolt. His father reveals a sudden arrangement, a political marriage to a princess from the Renarut kingdom. Rid is completely floored, not just by the marriage, but by the fact that this girl is the exact same age as he is. While his father discusses the logistics of preparing the estate, Rid can't shake a nagging doubt. As a member of a Marquis family, he feels their status is far too low for a foreign princess. Why would someone of her rank be tied to someone like him? To explain the situation, his father reveals a dark chapter of history. The Renarut kingdom is ruled by dark elves, and for years, they suffered under the brutal slave hunts of the neighboring Bolst kingdom, leaving them in a desperate, critical state. Driven by survival, Renarut turned to the Magnolia Empire for aid. The price of protection was steep. They had to become a vassal state. In exchange, the slave trade was outlawed, and the Dark Elves finally found a semblance of freedom. Now, this marriage is a strategic move to cement those ties. Because the emperor already has an heir, the princess cannot be the crown princess, making a noble family like the Valdias an acceptable match. Rid, however, feels a pang of guilt, realizing the princess is essentially being forced into a lower status marriage. Of his son's hesitation, his father offers a simple yet heavy piece of advice. If he truly feels sorry for her, then he must simply love her enough to make up for her lost status. The happiness of a girl with a troubled fate now rests entirely on Rid's shoulders. With a sharp, commanding look, his father leaves him with one final order: protect the princess. Faced with the weight of this responsibility, Rid can only give a stunned yet determined agreement. Curiosity finally gets the better of him. When he asks for her name, he receives the answer: Farah Renarut, the first princess of the Renarut kingdom. The reality of his future begins to take a tangible shape. Rid doesn't just accept his fate, he takes initiative. He asks his father for permission to visit Renarut and help design her new residence, citing his mysterious imitated experiences. His father agrees to an unofficial visit, sending him as a prospective marriage candidate. Still, the absurdity of being a groom at 6 years old is almost too much to handle. But with a few encouraging words from Garn, Rid's spirits lift. Determined to be a good partner, he vows to do his absolute best for the princess. With a playful smile, Rid brushes off the formalities, reminding Garn that they're still just kids. Calling his future wife Madam feels a bit too much for now. Even the family's butler offers a polite apology for his rudeness, but Rid quickly puts him at ease, keeping the atmosphere light and friendly. As a new chapter begins, Rid finds himself at the Grand Estate, searching for Chris. He wonders if she's still asleep and tentatively calls out to her, his curiosity leading him to quietly slip into her room. He finds her fast asleep, looking peaceful and ethereal. Struck by her beauty, Rid can't help but feel a wave of sympathy, realizing just how exhausted she must have been to crash so hard. But the silence is broken when Chris begins to mutter in her sleep, mentioning His Imperial Majesty. Startled and feeling like he's intruding on something private, Rid quickly decides that listening in is a bad idea and makes a move to leave. Just as he tries to exit, the door refuses to budge. Panicked, he wonders if someone is blocking him from the other side, only for the mischievous Mel to appear with a knowing smirk. That's no good, Nichama, she teases, having caught him red-handed. Mel doesn't let him off easy, lecturing him on the impropriety of entering a woman's room without permission. Rid desperately pleads with her to open the door before Chris wakes up, and after a moment of teasing hesitation, Mel finally gives in. Once Chris awakens, she admits she was simply too tired to stay awake. Relieved that his secret visit went unnoticed, Rid listens as Chris begins to reveal the truth about her time in the capital, including the secret business talks, and a complex charade involving Count Roland. In the capital, the Imperial Majesty had ordered Count Roland to pay reparations for insulting Chris. But in a surprising move, Chris rejected the payment, stepping forward to make a request of her own before the royal court. With poise and authority, Chris addressed the gathered nobles, urging them to stop spreading rumors and rely only on verified information. She warned that it would be a disgrace to the Magnolia Empire if its own nobility brought international scorn upon themselves, leaving Count Roland stunned. The Imperial Majesty apologized for the lack of education among his subordinates, while Chris graciously apologized on behalf of everyone present. Back in the present, Rid reflects on her brilliance. By framing the issue as a collective failure of the nobility rather than just Roland's, Chris resolved the conflict with masterful diplomacy. Rid and Chris discussed the political fallout of Count Roland's faction, noting how those associated with him are losing their standing. Chris warns that Roland is a formidable opponent in commerce, skilled in shady deals and acquiring rights, which makes Rid realize just how important it is to keep Chris as an ally. Rid expresses his sincere gratitude, telling Chris that her company's arrival in the Baldia territory has been a true blessing. Deeply moved, Chris admits that despite her hard work, no one had ever truly accepted her before, making her encounter with Rid feel like a stroke of luck. A glimpse into Chris's past reveals she was born into the Saffron Company, where her older brother was the designated heir. However, Chris's natural talent for business far surpassed his, and though she only wanted to support him from the shadows, people began to gossip. Fearing that the rumors would tear her family business apart, Chris made the brave decision to go independent, starting a new company in the Baldia territory. But the reality of starting from scratch in a foreign land was brutal, and years passed without a single noteworthy success. It was during this period of struggle that Rid appeared in her life. With a knowing smile, he offered her comfort, reminding her that it isn't uncommon for someone with great talent to struggle to achieve their goals at first. Rid continues to encourage her, explaining that it was her sheer persistence and the hard work she put in every day within the Baldia territory that eventually brought the Christie Company to his attention. He tells her firmly that he hates seeing her put herself down. With a bright, genuine smile, Rid tells Chris that she is the one who has made it this far through her own strength, and that she should be confident in herself. The sudden, heartfelt praise leaves Chris completely breathless and stunned. Tears stream down Chris's face as the weight of her loneliness lifts. Having worked like a madman through countless hardships, being truly acknowledged and seen by Rid is the one thing she had always secretly craved. Back in the present, Chris outlines the conditions for a priority order, including advance payment and guaranteed stock. While Rid worries that their new aloe cultivation might not be enough to fulfill such a large request, Chris reveals with a confident smirk that she has already handled it. Chris explains her aggressive strategy, leveraging the supply channels of both her and the Saffron Company, contracting farmers and requesting wild aloe from adventurer guilds to beat the market price spike. Impressed by her frightening speed, Rid reminds her to make sure she secures enough product for herself as well. Emma's sudden and intense praise leaves Rid completely flustered. He's genuinely confused by her boldness, while she remains utterly convinced that everyone would adore someone as beautiful as him. The conversation shifts to business as they finalize the names for their new skincare line. Emma is caught off guard to find her own name, and Christie's, gracing the labels of the skin lotion and conditioner. Emma offers her connections to the Imperial Palace, but the mere mention of Empress Matilda sends a chill down Rid's spine. To him, she is a living nightmare, and he has no desire to get anywhere near her. In a misguided attempt to be considerate, Rid mentions he wants to avoid anyone who makes Emma whimper in her sleep. The room goes silent as Emma realizes exactly what he just admitted to. The realization hits like a thunderbolt, and Emma erupts in a whirlwind of fury. To her, there's only one explanation. Rid is absolute scum for peeking at a woman while she was sleeping. Just as the chaos peaks, Mel arrives with a fresh pot of tea. Desperate to salvage the situation, Rid begs the maid to intervene and tell Emma that it was all just a coincidence. But Mel isn't about to let him off the hook. With a single cold truth, she reveals that Rid wasn't just glancing. He had been staring at Emma for ages, leaving him completely devastated. Away from the light-hearted bickering, a much darker struggle unfolds. Rid's mother battles a relentless illness, her body racked by coughing fits, and a failing strength that leaves her heart hammering in her chest. Despite the pain and the confinement of her bed, her spirit remains unbroken. She clings to a singular desperate hope, that one day she will definitely stand on her own 2 feet again. As she struggles for breath, a familiar voice cuts through the silence, urging her to be still and stay quiet. Someone enters the room, bringing a moment of quiet care to her lonely battle. A serene, almost dreamlike vision of a woman drifting through a field of flowers, her silhouette framed by a gentle breeze and a protective umbrella. The quiet of the room is broken as a tall, white-haired man, a young boy, and a woman in a researcher's cloak enter. Lying in bed, Nunnally Baldia greets them with a graceful yet fragile smile, apologizing for her lack of decorum. A visitor introduces herself as Sandra Ernest, a magic researcher, leaving the young boy in awe of her dignified presence. But the atmosphere shifts instantly as the father finally breaks his silence, confessing that he has been hiding the true nature of his wife's illness. The truth falls like a hammer. The disease is called mana deficiency. It is a cruel, fatal condition, and according to the doctors, it is completely incurable. Shocked by her calmness, the father demands to know who told her, but Nunnally simply smiles. She reveals the heartbreaking truth. She didn't need a doctor to tell her. She had already felt her own body failing and knew her end was near. As tears well in the eyes of her son, Rid, Nunnally reaches out to comfort him. She accepts her fate with a quiet strength, apologizing for the pain her illness has caused the one person she loves most. The heavy silence is shattered when Rid turns his frustration toward his father, bluntly calling him a failure for his stiffness. In a sudden burst of energy, he pushes his father to stop being so distant and finally embrace his family, even urging him to call Sandra by her nickname, Mel. Rid's words pierce through the father's defenses, forcing him to confront his own cowardice. He realizes that while he buried himself in work to escape reality, Nunnally had been facing the terror of a fatal disease all alone. Overcome with regret, the father sinks to his knees, clutching Nunnally's hand and begging for forgiveness for his grave errors. In a moment of pure, raw emotion, they finally profess their love for one another, bridging the gap created by years of silence. With the emotional storm past, Sandra steps in to provide a mana potion. While she admits it cannot cure the disease, it can at least ease the symptoms, offering a small, flickering light of hope amidst the tragedy. Panic erupts in the room as Rid's mother lies pale and breathless in bed, her condition worsening by the second. A desperate mana measurement is taken, and the result is catastrophic. This is bad. The situation is critical. She has only 8 mana left. Rid screams for medicine in a frenzy, while Nunnally quickly steps in to administer the necessary treatment to save her. Every second feels like an eternity as the mother struggles for air. Overwhelmed by fear, young Rid cries out with all his might, begging his mother not to give in to the darkness. Through the haze of pain, she barely manages to whisper his name. Hearing her voice, Rid breaks down completely, his heart-wrenching screams echoing through the room. In a sudden, powerful movement, a man lunges forward, catching her in his arms. The young girl watches in stunned silence, the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. He pulls her close in a desperate, tight embrace, as if his own strength could keep her from slipping away. Memory shifts back to a different time, to when the narrator first met Nunnally. Back then, they were working as an aide to Arwen in the capital, driven by an eager ambition to climb the social ranks. Even in a clumsy disguise with a wig and glasses, Arwen's presence is commanding. He insists on a personal inspection of the town, claiming he has a very good reason. He wants to find the perfect present for his wife. But beneath the light-hearted excuse lies a heavy truth. Arwen reveals that his own father's health is failing, meaning he will likely inherit the crown within a few years. leaving him very little time to enjoy the simple freedom of the town. With a bittersweet smile, Arwen admits that before the weight of the throne falls upon him, he wants to burn the image of everything he loves and must protect into his eyes forever. Rid coordinates his team, giving his approval for a member to leave while reminding her not to overdo it. He then gives a stern order to Dinas to ensure Arwen's safety, as tension rises in the background. Meanwhile, in a secluded alley, a young woman finds herself cornered by a smug, entitled noble. Despite her fierce rejection and insults toward his arrogance, the man refuses to let her go, gripping her wrist tightly. The situation turns dire as the noble's goons surround her, their faces twisted in cruel amusement. He mocks her fear, threatening to whisk her away in a waiting carriage, leaving the woman desperate and praying for a savior. Just as hope seems lost, a calm voice cuts through the air. Raynor arrives on the scene, questioning the group's behavior. The noble quickly tries to cover the woman's mouth, lying through his teeth that they are simply lovers having a secret rendezvous. But the woman seizes the moment to scream for help, calling the man a bastard and denying any relationship with him. Seeing her distress, Raynor's expression shifts into a confident smirk as he decides to step in. A flash of violence, the arrogant noble and his thugs are left groveling in the dirt. Raynor looks down on them with cold indifference, ordering them to get lost, even as one of them, Logus of the Galliano family, spits out a bitter threat. Oh, safe at last, the woman breaks down in tears, overwhelmed with gratitude for her rescue. Raynor offers a gentle word of praise and a comforting pat on the head, acknowledging the strength she showed while enduring the ordeal. As they regroup, Raynor reminds Dinas to keep his voice down to maintain their undercover status. Unaware of the mission's details, the woman can only gaze at Raynor, completely captivated by his kindness and nobility. A few months pass, and Raynor is blindsided by a shocking revelation. He discovers that a marriage proposal has been arranged for him, backed by the approval of both his parents and Matilda. The mysterious partner is Nunnally Ronamus, known as the Crimson Lady, a renowned beauty who has rejected every suitor thus far. Though he's never even seen her face, Raynor's life is about to change as he prepares to meet this enigmatic woman. A sudden spark of recognition ignites. He remembers the girl from his past, and she is genuinely pleased to find that she hasn't been forgotten. He speaks of her as the Crimson Lady, not as a warning but as a heartfelt compliment to her enchanting beauty and striking hair. But for her, the title is a source of deep embarrassment, born from a cold rejection of a suitor that sparked cruel rumors. It is a side of her history he never knew. Touched by his sincerity, her heart flutters. He doesn't see a cold woman. He sees someone he is completely smitten with. With a heartfelt proposal, he asks her to join him in the Baldia territory as his wife. Her answer is a joyful, resounding yes. Back in the present, the atmosphere is thick with tension and hope. The medicine has been administered, and the children desperately plead for Rid to check the results. A measurement is a miracle, 101 mana. The shock and joy are instantaneous as they realize the treatment actually worked. Slowly, Nunnally opens her eyes, her voice a fragile whisper as she calls out for her husband and her son. The children erupt in cries of pure relief, shouting for their mother. A radiant smile returns to her face, announcing that the darkness has finally lifted. Overcome with emotion, the young girl can no longer hold back her tears of joy. With the crisis averted, the family implements a strict recovery plan with mana potions and permanent care. It is a recovery that seemed impossible, made real thanks to the brilliance of Raynor. Andra recounts a daring move by Raynor, who decided that Nunnally Sama couldn't take her medicine alone. In a bold display of care, he chewed the medicine himself and delivered it mouth to mouth. With a mischievous smile, Rid suggests they leave the two alone, deciding it's time to give the loving couple some much-needed privacy. Meanwhile, under a moonlit sky, political tensions brew within the imperial palace. A marriage proposal has been made, but the terms are viewed as a slight against the imperial family's prestige. The high-ranking official, however, decides to allow the visit. Since they were the ones seeking a partner, they cannot simply dismiss the chosen candidate. Though he warns that any flaws in the Marquis' son will not be overlooked. While the young princess looks forward to the meeting, a darker plot begins to form. A mysterious figure smiles sinisterly, wondering what might happen if they intervened in the process. Back with Rid, Sandra can't help but tease him for his unexpectedly mature outlook on romance. But the mood shifts quickly when she reveals she's developed a concept for a new, special magic she wants to create with him. Leading him into a private room, Sandra reveals the core of her idea. She wants to explore the possibility of memory magic. This sparks a realization for Rid. Recalling knowledge from his previous life, he muses that if memories persist through reincarnation, they must be tied to the soul itself. He asks Sandra if a spell exists to view the memories of a soul. Sandra introduces him to the life magic god path, a rare and scholarly philosophy. It teaches that life force is the ultimate source of mana and the bridge to the divine, a concept that Rid finds highly relevant to his goal. Driven by curiosity, Rid proposes a daring experiment, attempting the opposite of mana conversion. Though Sandra is skeptical and warns him against the danger, Rid is convinced that this is the key to reaching the very essence of the soul. Rid attempts a daring experiment, squeezing his life force to generate mana. He delves deep into his own essence, wondering if the key to his soul lies in the conversion of energy. But the experiment takes an unexpected turn. Suddenly his mana is violently sucked away, pulling him toward a mysterious void that feels ominous and dangerous. In a flash, Rid is ripped from reality and dumped into a surreal dimension. He finds himself surrounded by an endless floating labyrinth of bookshelves. Oriented and alone in this silent archive, Rid searches for answers. Just as the isolation sets in, a mysterious voice breaks the silence, catching him completely off guard. To his astonishment, he is greeted by a girl who is a mirror image of himself. She reveals she is Memory, the personification of his own recollections, and she knows exactly why he's here. Memory offers him a deal. She can act as a living search engine for his past and the world around him. All he needs is a bit of mana to call upon her guidance. However, this power comes with a warning. Since this realm is the core of his soul, it's a delicate and perilous place. With a casual farewell, Memory vanishes, casting Rid back to the waking world. The return is anything but graceful. Rid snaps back into existence, landing squarely on top of a very surprised Sandra. A flustered Sandra erupts, scolding him for the sudden shock after his long, eerie silence. Rid can only offer a sheepish apology, trying to play it cool. As things settle, Rid shudders at the thought of what almost happened. He keeps the truth to himself, realizing that one wrong move in the depths of his soul could have trapped him there forever. Awakening in a daze, Rid is suddenly startled by a voice echoing inside his own mind. It's a surprising success. A mysterious presence has managed to establish a connection, leaving Rid questioning what this entity wants from him. Returning to the warmth of his home, Rid visits his mother, who is looking significantly healthier. Beside her is Sandra, who is carefully adjusting the medicine dosages to ensure a steady recovery. Rid's resolve hardens. He doesn't just want to save his mother, but anyone suffering from the same affliction. By transferring his mana measurement ability to Sandra, he leverages her expertise as a magic researcher to turn her into the perfect personal physician. Lost in his own thoughts, Rid barely notices his mother's concerned gaze. The quiet moment is broken when Sandra reminds him that the time has finally come to meet the influential Rainer Sama. The announcement comes with a stern delivery. The schedule for the visit to Renarut is set. For Rid, this isn't just a trip, it's the breakthrough he's been waiting for. Renarut holds the key to his mother's cure. To craft the necessary mana potion, Rid needs moonlight grass, a rare ingredient that can only be sourced through Chris's company. With Renarut's advanced farming technology, he hopes to secure a stable supply and finally end the disease. But politics are never simple. While King Elias seeks friendship, some of his vassals are plotting against the proposed marriage, hoping to sabotage Rid's position to pave the way for a royal union. Rid's father delivers a cold truth. No nation is ever truly united. He warns his son that surface-level information is useless for a leader, promising to teach him the harsh realities of power. As he listens, a chilling realization hits Rid. His father may have a secret collaborator within Renarut. Far away, the shadow of the Magnolia Empire looms. The conversation turns to the Empire's ultimate weapons. The sword, Marquise Rainer Baldia, and the shield, Marquise Grade Kelvin. Enter noble Norris Temuska, a proud dark elf who views the alliance with the Empire with disdain. While Norris speaks of suitability, others see his ambition. A dangerous scheme to use a royal marriage as a Trojan horse to seize control of the Empire from within and liberate Renarut. Ryasis storms in, his voice trembling with rage as he confronts his father. He cannot believe the man is actually planning to hand over little Farah as a hostage to the Empire. To the father, this is merely a political necessity to bind two nations together, a lesson in leadership for a future king. But for Rhesus, no political gain is worth the sacrifice of his sister. Missed as a child who cannot control his emotions, Rhesus is ordered to his room to cool off. He leaves with a heavy heart, unaware that Farah has been watching the exchange. Sweet reunion follows as Rhesus encounters Farah, who greets him with a bright, innocent smile. He admits he was scolded by their father, leaving the young girl genuinely surprised. Looking at his sister, Rhesus is reminded of their mother's beauty and grace. Farah is more than just a sibling to him, she is his absolute pride and joy. As Farah departs, Rhesus's gaze turns sharp and determined. He refuses to let her be neglected or used as a pawn in a political game. With a clenched fist and a burning heart, Rhesus makes a solemn vow. He will do whatever it takes to protect his little sister from the cruelties of the world. Meanwhile, Rid is having a much less dramatic struggle. getting berated by memory, a special magic he developed to access his past life's knowledge. The only catch? It drains his mana like a costly pay-per-minute phone call. Rid tries to recall the plot of Tokirella, but there's a problem. He used the skip unread option during his first playthrough. Now, memory is furious, describing his fragmented recollections as a pile of shredded paper. After learning that memory can only retrieve things he actually paid attention to, Rid begs for one more try. Reluctantly, the voice agrees to dig through the wreckage of his memories to see what can be salvaged. In a blur of speed, Ruben strikes, leaving Rid breathless and bewildered. Observe my movements, he commands, demonstrating the overwhelming power of body strengthening with mana. Rid can barely keep up, his body trembling from the sheer intensity of the lesson. Rubens explains that mastering this technique requires two things: the ability to produce mana and a fundamental understanding of martial arts. It's not about calculation, but instinct, feeling the flow rather than thinking. Rid is stunned by the logic, privately labeling them all as absolute muscle heads. Realization hits Rid like a physical blow. Rubens had been using this technique during all their previous lessons, explaining his seemingly infinite stamina. While Rid struggled against his own limits, Rubens was playing on an entirely different level. But instead of despair, a fire ignites within Rid. He's determined to master body strengthening and finally take Rubens down. With a spirited challenge accepted, the grueling training begins, running laps while channeling mana through every fiber of his being. As they push forward, Rid notices a change. He isn't tiring as quickly as he used to. Rubens is impressed by his rapid progress, admitting he's amazed Rid could keep up for so long without this technique. Despite the praise, Rid knows he still has a mountain to climb to match such talent. The training becomes a relentless cycle of agony and growth. From mana-infused sprints to endless push-ups and sit-ups, Rid pushes his body to the breaking point. Every drop of sweat brings him one step closer to bridging the gap during their sparring sessions. Determined to land a single hit, Rid throws himself into the fray. Even with his increased endurance, the cold reality of combat remains. The gap in reach, weight, and experience is still a towering wall between him and victory. The more he loses, the more his hunger for victory grows. Rid decides to weaponize his smaller stature, diving low to close the distance. If he can just land one punch or one kick, he knows he can prove his growth. In an instant, Rubens shuts him down, effortlessly disarming and capturing him. While Rubens praises his indomitable fighting spirit, he warns that such reckless tactics would be fatal against a more balanced opponent. Rid begs for one more round, but the session is over. Rid collapses in exhaustion. Rubens drops a bombshell. A special instructor has arrived, and everything they've done so far was merely a warm-up. Rid can only stare in horror, wondering how much more hellish the real training will be. Just as the training reaches a fever pitch, Raynor appears, his presence commanding and cold. He looks down at his son with a piercing gaze, asking if Rid has finally gotten used to the rigors of his training. Rid is stunned. He never imagined that his next opponent after Rubens would be his own father. But the shock quickly turns into a burning curiosity. He wants to know exactly how strong Raynor is, and just how much he can actually do against him. Challenged to show everything he's got, including his body strengthening, Rid grips his wooden sword and steps forward. Rid launches a fierce attack, but Raynor blocks it with effortless precision. Even in the heat of the clash, the father is impressed, noting that Rid's swordsmanship and physical power are incredible for his age. He jokingly admits he's almost terrified of his own son. The battle intensifies, but the gap in skill is staggering. Raynor pushes Rid back with relentless efficiency, mocking his hesitation. "What's wrong? You're not done yet, are you?" he asks, before lunging forward to seize the initiative once more. Gasping for air and completely drained, Rid collapses. He's bewildered by how quickly the round ended compared to his fights with Rubens. However, Raynor's verdict is clear. Rid has proven himself capable and has official Amisbek's wooden sword test. But the lesson is far from over. Raynor declares that it's time to test Rid's grit, the mental fortitude to stay composed regardless of the circumstances. He warns his son that in actual combat, this kind of resolve is the difference between life and death. Raynor gives a chilling instruction. Rid must take a stance and not move a single inch, no matter what happens, while keeping his eyes locked on his father. As Rid nervously agrees, Raynor lets out a low chuckle, deciding that his son will indeed be worth the effort of training. The atmosphere shifts instantly. As Raynor prepares to move, an overwhelming, crushing pressure descends upon Rid. It's a sensation unlike anything he's ever felt, the sheer weight of a true warrior's presence. In a blur of blinding speed, Raynor strikes. The movement is so fast and powerful it feels like the world itself is being sliced open, a display of true, unfiltered strength. A blade stops a hair's breadth from Rid's skin, leaving him frozen in terror. In that moment, Rid experiences it for the first time, the visceral, suffocating chill of genuine killing intent. The intensity of the training is too much. Rid breaks down in tears, completely overwhelmed by the terrifying pressure emanating from his father. Stern and uncompromising. His father demands to know why he closed his eyes. Rid admits he was paralyzed by fear, but his father reminds him that such terror is a natural first step for anyone. He explains that on a real battlefield, the key to survival isn't ignoring fear, but embracing it with grit. Fueled by this lesson, Rid's fear transforms into a fierce determination to face the blade. With Rubens cheering him on from the sidelines, the training resumes. His father prepares another strike, warning him once more. Do not close your eyes. Follow every single move. The blade whistles through the air, coming dangerously close. Rid trembles, feeling as though he might actually be cut, but he forces himself to endure the terror for the sake of his own survival. He refuses to blink. Through the panic, Rid focuses everything on witnessing the path of his father's sword, determined to learn from the very thing that scares him. Having survived the onslaught, Rid catches his breath, only to be hit with a shocking realization. This was just the beginning. There's more to come, and it's time for the next stage. The goal is simple but daunting. Rid must cross the line and reach Rubens. His father warns him that keeping up with his attacks will be anything but easy, but Rid is ready to give it his all. The attack begins and the speed is blinding. Rid can barely track the movements, stunned by the overwhelming velocity of his father's strikes. But this time he doesn't freeze. Realizing he's grown accustomed to the pressure, a determined smile crosses Rid's face as he vows to overcome his father's sword. The tension of training breaks as Rubens charges forward with pure excitement, shouting for Rid-sama. Rid meets him with an equally warm smile, welcoming the boy's enthusiasm. Rid pulls the exhausted boy into a hug, praising him for enduring the grueling session. It was a harsh lesson. The father's swordsmanship was merciless, proving that the wooden swords they used previously were mere toys compared to this real training. The father's declaration that they will train this way every single time leaves Rubens in a state of shock. While Rid tries to frame it as a sign of affection, Rubens can only weep at the realization that his father is a complete Spartan. Suddenly, a familiar voice rings out as Melody rushes toward them, followed closely by her maid. Rid looks on with curiosity, wondering what has brought his little sister running so urgently. Fleeing her brother's exhausted state, Melody erupts in a protective fury, raining blows upon her father for bullying her beloved Ni-chama. She declares her absolute hatred for him, leaving the father completely stunned by the sudden assault. Melody quickly whisks Rid away, declaring that training is officially over. As they leave, the father is left in a cloud of depression, heartbroken that his daughter hates him. Despite Rid's attempts to explain that the harshness was for her own sake, a few days pass and the father is still wallowing in the guilt of being hated. However, a shy Melody enters his room to offer a heartfelt apology, a gesture so unexpected that it moves the stern man to tears of joy. The time for departure arrives, and Melody clings to Rid's leg, pleading with him to come back soon. Rid smiles, entrusting the family's care to her, before she turns her attention to their father. The father scoops Melody up, promising to return as quickly as possible. As the farewells wind down, Nunnally gives Rid a final stern warning to be careful with his magic, assuring him that she will handle everything while he's gone. With a confident shout, Rid announces their departure. As the carriage rolls away toward Renarut, Melody waves goodbye, while his mother watches their departure from the window, marking the start of a new journey. As Rid sets off on his journey, the scene shifts far away to the depths of the demon forest in eastern Renarut. Here, amidst the oppressive greenery, two certain monsters are about to run into each other. Deep within the tangled roots and shadows of the woods, a pair of watchful eyes peers out from a hidden hollow. A tiny trembling slime finds itself cornered by a predatory green snake. Overwhelmed by panic, the little creature screams in terror, certain that it's about to be eaten. Just as the snake prepares to strike, a ferocious black cat-like beast lunges from the brush with a thunderous roar. The slime can only watch in utter shock as the predator suddenly becomes the prey. With effortless power, the black cat makes short work of the serpent, leaving the snake defeated. Starstruck and wide-eyed, the slime is completely enamored, thinking the mysterious savior is the coolest thing it's ever seen. In the mana-dense demon forest, slimes sit at the very bottom of the food pyramid, serving as easy prey for almost every other creature. While most slimes simply multiply by splitting, a unique individual is occasionally born, one that never splits, but continues to absorb mana indefinitely. As a result of accumulating so much mana, this particular slime developed something entirely new, a complex emotion, namely the crushing weight of fear. Living as a constant quarry, the slime did its best to survive stealthily, only to be spotted by its natural enemy. Driven by a desperate need to hide and survive on its own, it is suddenly addressed by the black cat. The black cat begins to head toward a sheltered hollow in a massive tree, glancing back with a look of confusion. It can't help but wonder why this strange little blob is following so closely behind. Despite its gruff demeanor, the cat allows the slime inside, admitting that its conscience wouldn't let it leave the creature to be eaten. Though it jokingly labels the slime as emergency food, a strange and unlikely cohabitation begins. The black cat returns to its nest, only to find it unexpectedly spotless. A small slime is the culprit, having happily devoured every single bone and leftover. In a rare moment of generosity, the cat shares its meal as a thank you for the cleaning. A deal is struck: the slime can stay, provided the nest remains pristine. An unlikely partnership forms. While the black cat provides the food, the slime handles the chores, and over time, a silent bond of understanding grows between them. Their routine becomes a domestic one, with the slime now acting as the cat's alarm clock, insistently waking him up for the morning hunt. When impossible happens, the slime speaks. The black cat is completely blindsided, wondering if some strange magic has allowed its companion to finally communicate. Inspired, the slime expresses a desire to look like the cat. The black cat, feeling smug, makes a bold wager. If it can actually become cute, he'll take it as his wife. Word of this strange pair spreads throughout the demon forest. Rumors of a shadow cougar and its slime mate pique the interest of locals and greedy hunters alike. One day, the slime excitedly calls the black cat over, eager to reveal a surprising new discovery. In a flash of light, the slime transforms into a magnificent, fluffy white cat monster, leaving the black cat absolutely speechless. The white cat asks for his opinion, having chosen its color to complement his own. Flustered and smitten, the black cat admits it's cute, only to be reminded of the marriage promise he made. A powerful black cougar recalls a surprising bond from the past. He remembers a slime who worked tirelessly, learning to speak through magic and even shifting its form just to be like him. Driven by a desire to reward that devotion, the cougar makes a bold declaration under the moonlight. He asks the white cat-like creature to stay with him forever as his mate and wife. Overwhelmed, the white cat hesitates, reminding him that it is nothing more than a slime. But the cougar is unwavering, declaring that appearance means nothing compared to the bond they share. Tears of joy fall as the slime accepts, confessing its love for the black cougar. And so an unusual couple was formed, living a quiet, happy life in the heart of the demon forest, until fate intervened. While other mysterious encounters unfold elsewhere in the world, we return to our protagonist. Rid, completely drained, collapses onto his bed at an inn, barely able to move. The journey to Renaroot continues with a large escort, including Rid's father, Rubens, and the Christie Company. But for Rid, the trip is a nightmare. The grueling carriage ride has left him battling severe motion sickness. Seeking a moment of peace, Rid reaches out to memory to check for any useful intel. The entity reveals a lead: a prince named Rhesus Renaroot, who resides in their destination country. An image of the prince appears, a dark elf with tan skin, black hair, and sharp yellow eyes. Judging by that piercing gaze, Rid suspects his future brother-in-law might be a real piece of work. A gentle knock at the door brings Chris into the room. Seeing Rid struggle, she thoughtfully offers him herbal candy specifically designed to soothe carriage sickness. In his exhausted state, Rid sees Chris as nothing less than a goddess descending from the heavens. Deeply touched by her kindness, he gathers his strength, ready to face tomorrow's challenges. The journey finally brings them to the border of Renaroot. While this region wasn't a focal point in the main story of Tokirella, it always had certain elements that drove players wild with excitement. And there they are. Legendary Dark Elves. Clad in sharp, disciplined military uniforms and armed with blades, their presence is as imposing as it is striking. The sight is breathtaking, a seamless fusion of Eastern and Western cultures that leaves the young girl completely starstruck. It's an aesthetic that is simply too cool to ignore. Stepping into the town feels like stepping back into Meiji-era Japan, where traditional kimonos coexist with Western attire. This unique cultural blend is the lasting legacy of the alliance between Renaroot and Magnolia following the Bulst incident. Suddenly, something catches Rid's eye. Rice patties! A sight unheard of in Magnolia, but common here. His mind immediately races with a new ambition, establishing a supply line to bring this precious grain back to Baldia, because nothing beats the taste of home. But the time for daydreaming is over as a massive, imposing castle looms ahead. Within those walls wait the princess and every single person opposed to his marriage. It's time to focus. The heavy gates swing open to reveal the guest palace, a lavish estate where the group will be staying. With a flourish, the welcome begins. They are greeted by Zach Riverton, the man in charge of the main building. Rid recognizes him immediately, expressing his gratitude for Zach's vital role in relaying information between the capital and Renaroot. Zach explains that the palace was designed to make guests from Magnolia feel at home, but the real prize is the hidden hot spring. For Rid, This isn't just a palace. It's a luxury hot spring inn, and he is more than ready to indulge. The moment he hits the mattress, all the tension vanishes. Exhausted but triumphant, Rid collapses into a deep sleep, finally having arrived at his destination. Rid is completely blindsided when Diana appears before him dressed as a maid. She explains that during their time in Renarut, she will serve as both his bodyguard and his attendant. While he accepts her help, he can't help but wonder if such a restrictive outfit will hinder her ability to fight. Diana quickly dismisses his concerns with a confident smile. To prove her point, she begins revealing a hidden arsenal of weaponry concealed beneath her skirts, the air filling with the metallic clatter of blades and tools. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume of gear, Rid frantically tells her to stop. He's baffled as to why a knight would carry so many assassins' weapons, but Diana calmly explains that such tools are not uncommon among certain knights. With a touch of solemnity, Diana admits that physical differences often make head-on clashes against men difficult, forcing her to rely on these weapons to compensate. It was a necessity born from her unwavering determination to join the Knight's Order, no matter the cost. When Rid suggests she worked so hard for Reuben's sake, Diana is momentarily flustered. However, she eventually admits that seeing Rubens, the crybaby, pushing himself so hard inspired her to give her absolute best as well. Quickly recovering her composure, Diana denies doing it for anyone but herself. She reminds Rid that while she'll be his maid, he is far too noticeable to ignore, so she asks him to simply treat her as if she were nothing but air. The night falls over the grand estate. Rid retires for the evening, leaving the day's surprises behind. He settles in for some much-needed rest, unaware of the eyes already watching their arrival. At the guest palace, a poised woman with long, dark hair and pointed ears is informed that the Baldia family has finally arrived. With a mysterious gaze, she acknowledges the news. It is Asuna Lamarck, who recalls the bitterness of her past. She was assigned as the princess's bodyguard not out of honor, but as a way for her family to cast her out, likely spurred by her older brother's jealousy of her superior swordsmanship. Driven by a need to perfect her craft, Asuna dedicated her life to the blade. That same intensity now fuels her role as a strict mentor, relentlessly pushing the princess to correct her form and maintain the dignity of her station. The pressure on the young princess is suffocating. Forced to be the perfect example for her people, she is met with harsh reprimands and cold expectations, even as those around her question the severity of her training. The orders from the top are absolute, driven by the will of His Majesty and Eltia-sama. From dawn until dusk, her life is a grueling cycle of lessons on culture, politics, and the complex structure of the Magnolia Empire. To the world, she is a poised royal, but her personal bodyguard sees the toll it takes. Witnessing her quiet endurance, a deep resolve forms within them to become the support she so desperately needs. Even in her private moments, she wears a mask of strength. When her attendant, Asuna, asks if the burden is too much, she offers a gentle smile, claiming she can bear it all. But beneath that fragile composure, a hidden pain lingers, unseen by almost everyone. The facade finally cracks in the silence of her own heart. Tears stream down her face as she forces a smile, haunted by a crushing sense of isolation. No matter how hard she strives for perfection, the warmth of a mother's or father's love remains a distant, unreachable dream. Echoes of her mother's voice serve as a constant reminder of her predetermined fate. She is commanded to marry the crown prince of Magnolia, and warned strictly to never let the son of the Marquis into her heart. For Farah, her life is not her own. It is a political tool. Everything about her existence, from the clothes she wears to the food she eats, has been decided by others. Desperate for a shred of autonomy, she recalls a time when she was sent to Magnolia to prepare for her marriage, only to find herself lost in the unfamiliar wilds of the Baldia territory. In that moment of vulnerability, a kind boy appeared and helped her find her way. Years later, the memory of his bright, cheerful smile remains a cherished secret. She can't help but wonder if he's still in that land, hoping he's doing well. Her thoughts drift to a stunning painting, a masterpiece of skill and beauty that captures a captivating presence. To Farah, the image is more than just art. It's a window into a grace she deeply admires. In the present, Rid finds himself equally captivated by the same painting. As he admires the artwork, a playful maid teases him for his intensity, while the butler reveals the identity of the woman in the portrait. Eltia-sama, the concubine of Elias-sama. Revelation hits Rid like a bolt of lightning. Eltia-sama is the mother of Princess Farah, his own future marriage partner. Horrified by the realization, Rid spirals into a panic, while the butler calmly notes the striking resemblance between the mother and the daughter. A delicate negotiation is underway. A young woman asks Zack-san if he opposes her marriage, while Zack, a man with glasses and pointed ears, realizes just how valuable this ally would be. He notes that not everyone in Renarut is against the Baldia family, and even King Elias might favor the union. To seal the deal, he hints that if Princess Farah is as beautiful as the paintings, he might just fall in love at first sight. With a playful and pleading expression, the young woman doubles down on her charm, asking Zack if he'll support them. The sheer intensity of her persuasion leaves Zack momentarily speechless, caught in the whirlwind of her request. It works. Zack gives in and agrees to offer his support, leaving the young woman absolutely ecstatic. Meanwhile, in a more refined setting, a high-ranking noble expresses his anticipation for what a certain son will achieve in the future. Conversation reveals that Rid's influence has already reached far, managing to secure the support of Zack Riverton. Zack isn't just any noble. He's the head of the Riverton family and related to Eltia, the king's concubine. Zack's importance cannot be overstated, as he secretly controls Renaroot's entire intelligence network and maintains a close relationship with King Elias. Having such a powerful collaborator is a massive advantage, especially with a royal audience scheduled for tomorrow. Elsewhere, a man named Norris reports to Rhesus-sama, confirming that their secret plan is proceeding smoothly. Norris presents himself as a humble servant, claiming his success is only because Rhesus accepted his ideas. But behind the scenes, a tragic family divide exists. Rhesus, the crown prince, and Princess Farah are half-siblings with different mothers. While Rhesus's mother is Queen Rizal, Norris is a relative of the queen who has been whispering in the prince's ear, slowly turning him into a pawn. Norris feeds Rhesus's resentment, poisoning his mind with claims that King Elias only loves Eltia, and that the concubine despises the prince. Seeing his mother, Queen Rizal, looking heartbroken only deepens the wound in Rhesus's heart. Consumed by anger and sorrow, Rhesus vows that he will never become a king like his father. Sensing an opportunity, Norris masks his true intentions with a comforting embrace, promising that by following his guidance, Rhesus will become a truly wonderful king. With a final ominous warning, Norris tells the prince that tomorrow's fate is in his hands. Determined and desperate, Rhesus closes his eyes, swearing to protect his little sister at any cost as he stands alone against the weight of the palace. A shadow looms, plotting in secret. The elf-eared man reports that the prince remains completely oblivious, trusting his target without a single shred of suspicion. A sinister smirk crosses the elf's face. With the pieces falling into place, he looks forward to crushing some Magnolian hick as part of his master plan. Meanwhile, Farah-sama is struggling with the unfamiliar feel of Western attire. Asuna, her attendant, offers a gentle word of encouragement as she helps her dress. Dressed in a stunning gown, Farah-sama looks radiant, though she can't help but wonder if her marriage candidate will find her appealing. Asuna doesn't hesitate to reassure her. With a few more compliments from Asuna, Farah-sama's nerves begin to settle. But the moment of peace is cut short by a knock at the door, signaling the arrival of someone formidable. Farah-sama's mother enters, her presence as cold and piercing as her words. She reminds her daughter that today's candidate is merely the son of a marquis, warning her that any failure would bring shame to the house of Renaroot. The mother's encouragement is nothing more than a demand for perfection, suggesting that only a flawless performance could lead to a royal match. Once the cold woman departs, Asuna rushes to comfort a shaken Farah-sama. Trying to stay positive, Farah-sama dismisses the pressure as mere business. As they talk, Asuna brings up the identity of the young man she's set to meet. The name Ridbaldia lingers in the air, sparking a flicker of curiosity in Farah-sama. Elsewhere, the scheming elf-eared man returns to his sovereign, seeking permission to proceed with their hidden agenda. The princess grants him leave to evaluate the marquis's son, but the man's internal thoughts reveal a deep disdain. To him, a mere noble is a far cry from the royal bloodline the princess truly needs for the sake of the country. While standing before the mirror, Rid meticulously checks his attire, his heart racing with nerves. He wonders if he looks out of place. But Diana is quick to tease him, joking that he's acting like a lava-struck young lady, preparing for her first meeting with a prince. Diana continues her playful assault, showering him with compliments about how cute and handsome he is. She tells him to be proud, even teasing that if he were a girl, he'd be absolutely drowning in marriage proposals, leaving a flustered Rid completely red in the face. A moment of levity is cut short when a butler arrives to announce that Reiner-sama is waiting. As Rid makes his way downstairs, his mind shifts from embarrassment to strategy, recalling a crucial piece of information shared by his allies. Walking alongside the butler, Rid receives a briefing on the political landscape. The opposition is led by a powerful dark elf named Norris, who holds a dangerous influence over Prince Rhesus. While other nobles like Eltia and Farah remain neutral in their quest for imperial marriage, the threat of Norris looms large. Rid's concern deepens as he realizes the gravity of the situation. If Prince Rhesus is truly under Norris's thumb, he could become the most formidable obstacle of all. Desperate to secure the prince's support and his future as a brother-in-law, Rid searches for a way to turn the tide. Then, The butler offers a shocking solution, temporarily crushing Prince Rysis's spirit. Rid is horrified by the suggestion, but the butler quickly clarifies that he doesn't wish to cause actual harm, only to break the blind admiration the prince has for Norris. The truth is grim. The once wise prince has become a shadow of himself, his conduct erratic and his mental state unstable due to his obsession with Norris. This corrupted spirit is exactly what needs to be dismantled if they hope to save the prince from himself. The butler frames the mission as a request from a concerned noble of Renaroot, offering to handle the political fallout if things get messy. Rid is stunned by the man's efficiency and the calculated way he's set the stage for this intervention. Recognizing this as a golden opportunity to make a lasting impact, Rid accepts the challenge. He resolves to give Prince Rhesus a change of heart, though his questions about the nature of the prince's admiration are met with a mysterious refusal. Arriving late, Rid is immediately met with a loud reprimand from a stern blonde noble. As the butler takes his leave with a cryptic smile, wishing Rid luck with his exploits, Rid is left wondering exactly what kind of chaos he's just signed up for. The journey leads them to the heart of the kingdom, arriving at the grand audience hall of King Elias. Marquis Rainer Baldia steps off the carriage, ready to face the monarch. Security is tight, and all weapons must be surrendered before entry. To keep the group focused, Rainer decides that only he, Rubens, Diana, and young Rid will proceed into the inner sanctum. As they are guided inside, Rid is wide-eyed with wonder, noting the unique Japanese-style architecture of the palace. The atmosphere grows heavier as they approach the final door. They step into a breathtakingly vast hall, its ornate ceiling towering above them. A long corridor of silent guards stands in formation, leading toward a single solitary chair at the far end. The air is thick with tension. Rainer leads the way with a stern expression, while Rubens, Diana, and Rid follow closely, feeling the weight of the room's oppressive silence. As they advance, they are met with a barrage of silent judgments, suspicion, curiosity, and doubt from those watching them. Despite the hostile energy, Rainer remains composed, urging Rid to keep moving. A cold realization hits when they see the seating arrangement. An official informs them that only Marquis Rainer has been granted an audience, leaving the rest without a place to sit. Rainer asks for Rid's thoughts, and the boy bravely vows to stay right by his father's side. However, Rid can't help but notice a certain man looking at him with absolute fury. Rubens and Diana are nearly boiling over at the perceived disrespect toward Rid, but Rainer quickly suppresses their outburst. He sternly instructs Rid on the strict etiquette required before the king, and the boy obediently bows. The silence is finally broken by a booming announcement. Hailing from the Magnolia Empire's Baldia territory, Marquis Rainer Baldia officially makes his entrance before the throne. The atmosphere is heavy with authority, as the royal party is revealed. King Elias Renaroot sits upon his throne, surrounded by his family and attendants, commanding the room with a single order to raise their heads. Amidst the tension, eyes are locked. Rhesus watches with a cold, stern gaze while young Farah looks on with wide-eyed, innocent curiosity. Rid, however, remains composed, silently observing the powerful figures before him. After a brief exchange between their fathers, King Elias turns his attention to the young guest. The reason for this sudden invitation becomes clear. Rid has been eyed as a prospective marriage partner for the princess. With polished grace, Rid introduces himself, acknowledging his lineage and his respect for the princess. King Elias notes their matching ages and prompts his daughter to respond. Princess Farah steps forward, introducing herself with a bright, beaming smile. Her pure, radiant energy catches Rid completely off guard, leaving him momentarily stunned. As they exchange greetings, Rid notices a peculiar twitch in Farah's ears, leaving him puzzled by her reaction. Meanwhile, the rest of the royal family introduces themselves, completing the circle of introductions. Elias expresses his hope for a friendly bond, but then cuts straight to the chase. He asks Rid for his honest opinion on the proposed union, putting the young noble on the spot. Rhesus dismisses the idea of asking a child's opinion, but the king remains insistent. Rid, however, isn't just listening. He's analyzing the room, identifying Norris and planning a response that will leave a lasting impression. Rid speaks with a sudden, unwavering conviction, declaring that the union must absolutely happen. His bold proclamation sends a shockwave through the room, catching everyone including the royal family by surprise. Not content with a simple agreement, Rid delivers a sophisticated political argument. By framing the marriage as a strategic necessity for border security and a deterrent to enemies, he proves he is far more than just a child. The strategic weight of the Baldia Marquisate is immense, possessing the rare authority to mobilize an army independently during emergencies. Seizing this advantage, Rid proposes a bold move, a marriage alliance that would serve as a powerful deterrent against the threat of Balst. The proposal sparks a heated debate among the nobles, with some questioning how Balst will perceive such a move. However, Rid's father steps in to ground the discussion, reminding them that national defense always takes priority over imperial orders. Though he dismisses the ideas as the words of a child, Rid's father cannot deny the logic behind the marriage alliance. With a mischievous glint in his eye, Rid hints that he has even more tricks up his sleeve, secrets he'll save for after the wedding. Adults are left reeling, half amused and half terrified by the young boy's calculating mind. One noble admits that if Rid were an enemy, he wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully at night. Impressed by his intellect, the emperor acknowledges Rid's insight, calling him by his proper name. But the praise comes with a caveat. True leadership requires excellence in both the pen and the sword. With a knowing smile, the emperor extends a challenge. He wants to see if Rid's physical prowess matches his mental acuity, asking the boy to humor him in a display of martial arts. Rid finds himself at the training grounds, completely bewildered. He had only come to visit Princess Farah, yet somehow he's been swept into a formal combat match under the watchful eyes of the nobility. A maid presents Rid with a wooden sword, but its crude appearance makes him suspicious. Just as he begins to wonder if this low-quality weapon is a ploy to embarrass him, the maid insists she personally chose it for his safety. Beneath her polite exterior, the maid's gaze turns predatory, as she whispers a fierce command for Rid to crush his opponents without mercy. As he prepares to fight, a sudden change in the brackets shifts everything. The atmosphere turns heavy as his new opponent steps forward, Rheasus Renarut. Facing the formidable son of the house, Rid can only stare in stunned silence at the mountain of a man before him. Rid can hardly believe it. He's actually about to face the prince in combat. While his supporters cheer him on to crush his opponent, Rid recalls a hidden objective, a request from a noble to completely break Rhesus's spirit. Trying to find an ally, Rid questions Zack, but the man remains unbothered. As they enter the arena, the atmosphere turns cold. Rhesus glares at Rid, unsettled by the calm smile on the young noble's face. The official in charge sets the stage, declaring that the spar will only end in surrender or total incapacity. But before the blades can clash, Rid raises a hand, interrupting the proceedings with a proposal of his own. Rid wants this fight to be their own private fun, free from outside interference. The official grants the request, decreeing that the match will only end on his command. Rhesus, however, is far from amused by the brat's audacity. The prince doesn't hold back, launching a barrage of insults. He mocks Rid's home as a wasteland and takes a cruel turn, sneering at Rid's father's failure to cure his bedridden mother. The taunts escalate into pure malice. With a sadistic grin, Rheasus hurls a vulgar, heartless insult toward Rid's mother, hoping to shatter his composure. Rid remains silent, but inside a storm is brewing. He can ignore the slurs against himself or his land, but attacking his mother, who is fighting for her life, is an unforgivable sin. He realizes Norris must have leaked his weaknesses to provoke this reaction. The tension reaches a breaking point. With a sudden spark of intensity in their eyes, the signal is given. Let the match begin. Watching from the sidelines, the prince's father calls his own son foolish. In the arena, Rheasus attempts a fake show of mercy, suggesting Rid surrender to avoid pain. Rid's response is cutting. Is talking the only thing the prince is good at? Pushed beyond his limit by Rid's mockery, Rheasus snaps. With a roar of rage, he lunges forward, his blade whistling through the air in a desperate attempt to silence the bastard once and for all. The dark-haired elf launches a fierce, desperate attack, but Rid remains composed, slipping through the onslaught with ease. With a sudden, precise movement, Rid turns the tide in an instant, sending his opponent crashing violently to the ground. The crowd watches in stunned silence as the dark-haired elf lies defeated and gasping, completely blindsided by the turn of events. Standing over the fallen fighter, Rid asks with cold indifference if that was all they had to offer. Enraged and humiliated, the elf scrambles back up, refusing to be mocked. Desperate to reclaim their pride, the elf charges back in, dismissing Rid's movements as wide and naive. They throw everything into one final strike, lock blades in a clash of strength, and the elf believes their superior build will secure the win. But Rid sees right through the desperation. The moment they locked swords, the match was already decided. In a blur of motion, Rid effortlessly slips past the guard and delivers a final decisive blow, sending the elf sprawling once more. The duel is over. Rid looms over his defeated opponent, bluntly pointing out that for all the boasting, they were nothing more than all talk. A wave of shock ripples through the spectators as they realize Rheasus has been completely dismantled. Rid looks on with a distant gaze, noting that his opponent has finally noticed the gap between them. There is simply no contest. As Rid stands victorious over the fallen elf, it becomes undeniably clear that his strength exists in a whole other class. Trembling and broken, the dark-haired opponent can barely find the strength to speak. But a cold, commanding voice cuts through his desperation, demanding a single thing. Stand up. The proud prince of Renarut, once so arrogant that he mocked a commoner from Magnolia for having a sick mother, now lies pathetic in the dirt. Rid looks down at him with disdain, pointing out the hypocrisy of a prince who relies on protective gear while sabotaging his opponent's weapon. Rid's voice booms with an intensity that shakes the prince to his core. He refuses to accept a cowardly surrender, forcing the fallen royal to face the crushing weight of his own failure. With every word, Rid strips away the prince's delusions. He warns him that surrendering now would brand him a spineless wimp for eternity. A tragic end for someone who actually possessed the potential to become a wise king. Driven by a mixture of rage and wounded pride, the prince finally snaps, screaming his defiance and swearing to defeat Rid. With a calm, focused gaze, Rid simply accepts the challenge. The clash is brief and brutal. Despite the prince's renewed spirit, he is no match for Rid's overwhelming skill, finding himself slammed back into the earth time and time again. A guttural scream of frustration escapes the prince as he is once again humbled. From the sidelines, the nobility watches in stunned silence, witnessing a royal being systematically dismantled. Onlookers are breathless, wondering what kind of hellish training Rid endured to reach such a terrifying level of strength. As he lies face down in the dust, the prince realizes the truth. Rid could have ended this match at any moment. It becomes clear that this isn't a fight for victory, but a lesson in humility. Rid isn't interested in the outcome. He is using his strength to force the prince to understand a truth that words alone could never convey. While the girls realize Rid's intentions are actually benevolent, a new shadow looms as they notice the suspicious behavior of the surrounding nobles. As for the prince, he can only lie there in a daze, wondering exactly how many times he's been knocked into the dirt. Rhesus is pushed to his absolute limit, gasping for air as he desperately demands a surrender. He doesn't realize that Rid's attempt to break his spirit through a display of overwhelming power has only fueled his stubbornness. When Rhesus calls him a monster, Rid's expression remains chillingly calm. With a single devastating blow and a cold declaration that he is a devil, Rid slams Rhesus into the dirt. The physical battle is over, but the interrogation begins. Rid shifts his approach, coldly asking if the insults directed at his sick mother were Rhesus's own idea or the result of someone else's manipulation. To Rid's surprise, Rhesus takes full ownership of his words, admitting he was the one who spoke them. The truth is out, and the pieces of the puzzle finally click into place for Rid. Despite his defeat, Rhesus's pride remains unbroken as he screams his refusal to surrender. Rid can only watch with a sigh, warning him that his stubbornness is only leading him toward the worst possible outcome. Just as the tension reaches its peak, Rid does the unthinkable. He raises his hand high and announces to everyone present that he is the one surrendering. The dust settles, and the scene shifts to the imposing halls of the palace as a new chapter begins. Now standing before the king, the atmosphere is thick with tension. When the monarch asks why he would possibly surrender, Rid's answer is a sharp challenge, suggesting the king already knows the reason. The king doesn't hold back, tearing into Rhesus for his childish desire to avoid losing. Broken and humbled, Rhesus finally admits that he was fighting for nothing more than his own pride, even while Rid was holding back. As the family conflict unfolds with the king's harsh reprimands, Rid approaches the defeated Rhesus. He wants to understand the true motive behind the match, questioning why Rhesus chose such a destructive path when a simpler victory was within reach. Rid steps forward with a bold request, asking for a private conversation with the royal family. He even asks his own father to leave the room, catching everyone's attention. Intrigued, King Elias grants the request and demands to hear the reason behind such a sudden plea. Rid reveals the truth about the words Rhesus spoke before their match. The prince had arrogantly threatened to send Rid back to the boonies of Magnolia in disgrace. The king is stunned, finding such behavior completely unacceptable for a prince in a diplomatic setting. But the insults didn't stop there. Rid recounts how Rhesus mocked his sick mother, claiming he was unfit to hold a sword and should instead run back to her for comfort. The weight of these cruel words leaves the room in a heavy, suffocating silence. For Rid, these words were an unforgivable strike against his family's honor. To insult the Baldia family in such a manner is ultimate transgression, and Rid's eyes burn with a quiet, cold determination. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the king turns his gaze toward Rhesus, demanding to know if these accusations are true. Rhesus is caught in his own web of lies, unable to deny the truth, as the king's expression turns to one of sheer disappointment. The king's patience snaps, and his voice thunders through the hall. He is absolutely livid that Rhesus would insult a noble of an allied nation, especially one who is a candidate to marry his own sister. With a sudden violent motion, the king decides that a prince who lacks such basic decency is useless. Declaring that Rhesus no longer needs his head, he draws his sword in a lethal art. Facing certain death, Rhesus finally breaks, admitting that everything Rid said was true. In a desperate plea, he claims his actions were for the sake of his country and his 6-year-old sister Farah, believing the empire was her only hope. But the king isn't buying it, calling the plan short-sighted and cruel. He points out that sending a child to the empire only turns her into a tool for power, exposing that Rhasis was merely a puppet for suspicious influences. Completely broken and stripped of his delusions, Rhasis collapses into a heap of sobbing despair. His world shatters in an instant, leaving him screaming in agony as the consequences of his arrogance finally crash down upon him. Rhasis has finally hit rock bottom, throwing himself into a desperate dogaza. He begs Rid for forgiveness, admitting his words were an assault. But Rid knows that a personal apology isn't enough. This is a matter of national dishonor. Accepting the gravity of the situation, Rhasis bows his head in submission. With a heavy heart, he makes one final request, that Rid treats his sister Farah with the kindness and love she deserves. The scene shifts to Rhasis facing his father, the stern leader of his people. While Rhasis offers a sincere apology for the trouble he's caused, his father has no patience for such failure, calling him a fool. Panic erupts as Rhasis's mother begs for mercy, pleading that her son is still just a child. But Rhasis is resolute in his guilt, asking for one final wish, a request that sends a chill through the onlookers who fear he's preparing for ritual suicide. Instead of a plea for his own life, Rhasis begs his father to love his mother more. The father's cold denial of favoritism only highlights the deep fractures in their family, leaving Rhasis's mother stunned. In a sudden violent motion, the father raises his blade. Terror grips the room as Rid watches in horror, realizing the situation has spiraled far beyond a simple lesson in regret. "Wait!" Rid screams, lunging forward in a desperate attempt to stop the blade. He can't let this happen. He never wanted Rhasis to pay for his mistakes with his life. Through tears, Rid confesses that his only goal was to make Rhasis regret his actions, not to kill him. With a marriage on the horizon, Rhasis was supposed to become his brother, and Rid refuses to lose that bond. Seeing a flicker of hesitation in the father's eyes, Rid seizes the moment to negotiate. He offers a way out. He will forgive Rhasis, but only if the father agrees to a set of strict conditions. The first demand is a strategic one: support for the Christie Company to foster mutual trade between their lands. With the father's agreement, Rid secures Rhasis's safety while simultaneously expanding his own influence. Rid is completely blindsided by the sudden turn of events. The marriage between him and Princess Farah has been accepted, with the full blessing of Queen Riesel and Prince Rhasis. Eyeing the moment, Rid whispers a private request to the stern official. After a moment of tense silence, the man yields, formally accepting Rid's marriage to his daughter, though he insists the arrangement remain a secret for now. While Rhasis kneels in desperation, pleading for forgiveness for his crimes, Rid offers an unexpected olive branch. He refuses to let his potential future brother perish, attributing Rhasis's fall to a bad influence rather than malice. Amply moved by this act of mercy, Rhasis vows to start his life over from scratch. Meanwhile, the official agrees to all of Rid's requests, provided the deal stays strictly between them. As they shake hands, the man is left in awe of the young noble. He realizes that Rid is far beyond his reach, not only in swordsmanship but in the sheer strength of his character. With the conflict seemingly resolved, Rid begins to walk away, wondering if the match has finally settled everything. But his peace is short-lived as a familiar face suddenly appears. Princess Farah arrives with a bold proposition. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she asks Rid if he would be interested in a match against her formidable bodyguard, Asuna Landmark. Watching from the sidelines, a sinister man is shaken to his core. He can't fathom the monster Rid has become, while cursing the meddlesome maid who ruined his plans for a rigged fight. The tension peaks as the maid confronts the man's insults. With a sudden violent snap, she crushes the wooden sword in her grip, leaving the man staring in absolute horror. Playing the part of the weak and frail maid, she mockingly critiques the defective weapon intended for her master. With a fierce determination, she demands to go to the storage room to pick a sword worthy of Rid herself. Fury boils over as a long-haired man with pointed ears searches the grounds, his voice echoing with rage. He's not letting his target slip away, demanding they come out of hiding right now. In the shadows, a sinister plot takes shape. The man reveals a shocking claim, that the Marquis's son is a monster, and suggests using the prince's plight to spark a scandal. The goal is simple: manipulation. By spreading rumors of the prince's domination, they can turn the mid-ranking nobles against the engagement and force a complete surrender. But Princess Farah has her own strategy. Amidst a hall filled with ill intentions, she proposes a high-stakes sparring match between Rid and her elite bodyguard, Asuna Landmark, to dispel the poisonous rumors. Farah reveals the intelligence she's gathered, exposing the dark side of the Marquis's son. The rumors are grim: a sadistic streak and a penchant for torturing the prince with overwhelming strength. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the princess is forced into marriage with such a man, she becomes a mere hostage. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the group finds an ally willing to listen. The opposition faction has made its move, with a man named Norris at the center of the conspiracy. Farah knows they are walking into a trap, but she and Asuna have already devised a way to fight back. The plan is set. Gather the nobles once more and have Rheasus firmly deny the lies. Then, Rid will step into the ring against the genius Asuna, using his true strength to erase every bad impression and prove the truth. Determined to preserve everyone's honor, Farah's resolve shines through. Her father looks on with pride, noting that her intelligence is just like her mother's, leaving Rid deeply moved by her sincerity. With the plan approved, Rheasus begins the counter-offensive, explaining that the previous match was only prolonged due to the opponent's stubbornness. Yet, despite the logic, a few skeptical nobles remain unconvinced. The tension reaches a breaking point as a second match is officially announced. This time, Rid must face off against Asuna Landmark, the personal bodyguard of Princess Farah. While some are skeptical, a mysterious long-haired elf watches with a sinister smile, convinced that this is the perfect opportunity for Rid to finally be crushed. Asuna, this isn't just a duty, it's a thrill. She hasn't felt this kind of excitement in years, eager to test her strength against a worthy opponent. But before this clash, a secret meeting took place between her and a man named Norris, whose intentions were far from honorable. Norris offers a tempting deal. Betray Rid, make him suffer, and force him to withdraw from his marriage. In exchange, he promises to mend her broken ties with the Landmark family and free her from her duties. It's a proposal designed to exploit her past, but Asuna sees right through the sham. With cold indifference, Asuna rejects the offer, declaring she no longer has any attachment to the Landmark family. Infuriated by her defiance, Norris drops the act, snarling that she'll never be allowed to return to her homeland or her family if she continues to spurn him. But Asuna's loyalty is unshakable. With a fierce glare, she proclaims her pride in being the princess's bodyguard and orders Norris to never speak to her again. Defeated and steaming with rage, Norris storms off, leaving Asuna's resolve stronger than ever. Back in the present, the air is electric. Both Asuna and Rid share a rare moment of mutual anticipation, each looking forward to the challenge the other presents. Asuna reveals she noticed Rid's secret use of physical strengthening in his match against Rheasus, a feat so subtle that almost no one else caught it. Far from calling it cheating, she praises his mastery of the technique at such a young age, earning Rid's surprise and respect. Then the atmosphere shifts. Following the princess's orders to fight seriously, Asuna draws two swords, leaving Rid stunned by her sudden escalation. With a confident smirk, she offers a chilling apology for the pain she's about to inflict. The match begins in a blur. Before Rid can even react, Asuna lunges forward with blinding speed, her movements so swift they seem to tear through the air itself. In a split second, she vanishes from his sight, slipping perfectly into his blind spot. Rid's eyes widen in shock as he realizes the danger. She's already closed the distance, and a devastating attack is imminent. Seeing a momentary lapse in his opponent's defense, Rid lunges forward with everything he's got, shouting in triumph as he believes he's finally found an opening. But his victory is short-lived. With a breathtaking display of athleticism, the girl performs a perfect somersault, dodging the attack with ease and leaving Rid completely stunned. Asuna only chuckles at his surprise, her confidence radiating. Rid can't help but be impressed, unable to believe she could react with such precision and speed. A manic grin spreads across Asuna's face as she tips her hat, warning Rid to forgive her behavior during the match. She's not here for a friendly spar. She wants him to show her every single thing he's capable of. As the duel enters a new phase, the surrounding students watch in awe. Rid is left panting for air, his body straining under the intensity of the encounter. Blades clash in a shower of sparks. Rid desperately asks her to hold back a little, but Asuna remains relentless, stating that doing so would betray the princess's orders. In a blur of motion, Asuna strikes again, catching Rid completely off guard. He can barely process what's happening before he's sent reeling backward. Asuna acknowledges Rid's agility, noting his impressive acrobatics. While he recognizes her overwhelming strength, Rid's spirit doesn't break. He resolves to force her to show him her full power in return. Tweaking a strategic edge, Rid activates a mana measurement skill. The results are clear. While Asuna is formidable, Rid's mana pool dwarfs hers, giving him a significant hidden advantage. Realizing that they are both using body strengthening, Rid decides on a risky strategy. He'll turn this into a battle of attrition, enduring her superior swordsmanship until her mana runs dry. Asuna, sensing the shift, only asks for more fun. Rid faces off against Asuna, a confident smirk playing on his lips. As their wooden swords collide with a sharp crack, he's ready to give her a taste of karma. The atmosphere is electric. A young girl cheers with all her might, her voice echoing through the arena as the spectators watch the clash with bated breath. pressure mounts as students scream for Asuna to dominate the match. They demand she show the pride of Renarut in full force, leaving some onlookers stunned by the intensity. As the shouts for Asuna reach a fever pitch, a few loyal supporters turn to Rainer. With a calm, composed smile, he gives them his blessing to cheer for Rid as well. Show them what the Baldia family can do. The cheers for Rid erupt, fueled by the memory of his grueling daily training. Even his father watches in silence, his gaze stern but his heart demanding victory. While some feel humbled by the sheer skill on display, Asuna remains unfazed. She glances at the chaotic energy of the crowd and smirks, finding the sudden liveliness amusing. But for Rid, the situation is dire. Asuna's two-sword style is brutal, her movements fluid and unpredictable, almost as if she's shape-shifting. He's trapped in her rhythm, unable to find a single opening to strike. Asuna acknowledges the practicality of Rid's style, admitting it's superior to that of Prince Rhesus. But Rid isn't intimidated. He remembers the true masters who trained him, and vows that he cannot afford to lose here. I'll get a little serious. With a sudden burst of speed, Asuna unleashes a devastating strike. The impact is overwhelming, slamming into Rid and knocking the wind right out of him. Asuna looms over him, mocking his struggle and asking if that's all he's got. Gasping for air, Rid realizes he's in trouble, not just because of her skill, but because of a nagging worry regarding his mana measurement. Rid quickly calculates the odds, but the numbers aren't in his favor. With Asuna possessing more mana and years of superior experience in body strengthening, he realizes a battle of attrition is a losing game. Knowing he can't drag this out, Rid decides to put everything into one final decisive strike. Asuna, confident in her own strength, boldly challenges him to give it his best shot without dodging. With a desperate shout, Rid launches himself forward, pouring every ounce of his remaining strength into a high-speed assault. But just as victory seems within reach, the tide turns. Asuna counters with precision, leaving Rid wide-eyed as she declares the match over. Not ready to give up, Rid finds one last burst of will. He forces a counterstrike, catching Asuna off guard and delivering a blow that shocks her. The impact is devastating, sending a shockwave through the arena and cracking the very ground beneath them. Onlookers can only watch in stunned silence at the intensity of the clash. Both fighters collapse, completely spent. Gasping for air and drenched in sweat, Asuna looks at Rid with a soft, exhausted smile, acknowledging that they've finally reached their limit. The referee steps forward to deliver the final verdict. The crowd erupts as he announces the winner of the match, Asuna Landmark. Despite the loss, there's a sense of mutual respect between the two. As the other students react with a mix of awe and amusement, Asuna reaches out a hand to help Rid back to his feet. Asuna thanks him for the refreshing match, admitting how amazing it felt to push herself. But their moment of quiet sportsmanship is suddenly interrupted by someone rushing toward them in a flurry of excitement. Rid is absolutely beaming as a young elf girl gushes over his performance. She's completely starstruck, unable to believe how cool he was and how far he pushed Asuna during the match. Officials are equally impressed, declaring the sparring match one of the most inspiring they've ever witnessed. The man in the white uniform boldly challenges anyone who still doubts Rid's strength to speak their piece right now. Pressure turns toward Norris, who is forced to grudgingly acknowledge Rid's power. However, a young blonde boy watches from the sidelines, clearly unconvinced by the display. Intrigued by his physical prowess, the king expresses a desire to see Rid's magical talent as well. Exhausted from the battle, Rid politely asks for a short break to recover his strength before demonstrating his magic. The request is granted, and the crowd begins to disperse. Inside the palace corridors, a group of high-ranking figures move with a heavy, secretive atmosphere. Behind closed doors, a long-haired elf man is spiraling into a rage, slamming his hand against the wall. He's furious that Rid's victory has completely wiped out the malicious rumors he worked so hard to spread. Realizing his plan is falling apart. Desperate and panicked, the elf man shouts threats at a mysterious presence, claiming he only did what he was told. But the voice from the shadows remains cold, telling him he's fundamentally misunderstood the situation. The truth is brutal. The shadow only cooperated with him to unify the opposition, and now that he's become the culprit of their failure, he's useless. Before he can even process the betrayal, a dark force suddenly seizes him. With a chilling lack of empathy, the shadow declares that he was simply a tool, and it's now time for him to exit the stage. The elf man gasps for air, coughing blood as the darkness begins to consume him. Even in his final moments, the defeated man curses the lowly shadow for its treachery. But as a mysterious woman in a dark cloak leans in with a predatory smile, she mockingly offers her help to the broken man. Determined and refusing to back down, the long-eared elf woman clings to a flicker of hope, swearing that her struggle is far from over. Meanwhile, Rid is showered with praise for his performance in a recent match. Even his father, usually distant, tells him he's proud to call him his son, a gesture that leaves the young noble completely flustered. As they prepare for the next phase of training, Rid's father advises him to keep his magic simple and not overextend himself. While munching on some mana-restorative candy, Rid reflects on the delicate balance of standing out enough to be respected without becoming a target. A brief moment of peace follows as two elf girls offer him a local drink from Renaroot. The moment Rid recognizes the scent of green tea, the girls are delighted that he knows it. Lost in the soothing taste of the tea, Rid looks utterly blissful, much to the amusement of those around him. But the relaxation is short-lived as a stern military officer, Norris, announces that it's finally time to begin. Standing before a training post, Norris watches Rid with a mixture of reluctant respect for his persistence and simmering anger over past lies. He's impressed by the boy's drive, but some wounds run too deep to ignore. Norris instructs Rid to fire a fireball on his signal, unable to fathom how such a small child possesses such power. However, when Rid describes himself as pathetic, it leaves the experienced warrior genuinely perplexed. Atmosphere shifts instantly as Norris drops a bombshell, bluntly asking Rid to withdraw from his engagement. He argues that the princess is Renaroot's ultimate trump card, and that a child like Rid simply isn't enough to secure their future. But Rid's answer is immediate and firm. He will not withdraw. Rid doesn't just refuse, he tears through Norris's facade, exposing the cold political scheme to use Princess Farah and the Dark Elves to seize control of the Empire from within. He realizes that Norris is merely a man blinded by a wounded pride, seeking revenge for his country's fallen status. With a surge of conviction, Rid lashes out against the man's selfishness. He declares that Princess Farah is not a tool for revenge, and that the future belongs to the youth, not to old men who can't even shoulder the burden of their own people's destiny. Norris looms over Rid, his voice dripping with arrogance as he reveals the dark influence he wields over the country. He dismisses the boy as a mere child, coldly admitting that while Rid and Raynor are tough opponents, killing him is a very real possibility. But the threat takes a more sinister turn. Norris brings up Rid's sickly mother and little sister, reminding him that their peaceful lives, and the happiness of everyone at the mansion, could crumble with a single word from him. The thought of his family in danger sends a chill through Rid's heart. As he envisions the faces of Mel and his mother, Norris's smug smile only fuels the tension. With a cold command, the man orders Rid to fire his magic at the target. Rid's fists clench in a silent, shaking rage. He might have tolerated Norris's ego and spite if it were only directed at him, but threatening the people he loves is an unforgivable sin. In this moment, Norris is no longer just a nuisance. He is an enemy. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. Rid's eyes ignite with a terrifying bloodlust, releasing a shockwave of pressure that catches Norris completely off guard. With a voice like ice, Rid demands that the man repeat his threats against his family. The dam finally breaks. Rid lets out a primal scream of fury, unleashing a massive explosive surge of energy that tears through the air around him. The sheer force of the blast sends Norris flying back, his face twisted in pure terror. He can't comprehend it. Where did this terrifying, overwhelming power come from? Later, Rid discusses his theories with Sandra-sensei, who is utterly baffled by his ideas. He proposes a radical concept: compressing mana after casting a spell, a technique she's never even heard of. Intrigued and cautious, she agrees to supervise his experiment. Rid begins with a demonstration, launching a sharp fire spear that pierces the air. When Sandra-sensei asks if that was the compressed version, Rid calmly explains that it was merely a normal cast, used as a baseline for comparison. Now it's time for the real test. With a focused gaze, Rid prepares to cast the spell again, but this time, he intends to lock in the magic and pour an endless stream of mana into it to see just how far he can push the compression. Rid focuses every ounce of his will, feeling the raw power surge and grow within his palm. He pushes himself even further, craving more strength to crush his enemy, but the energy becomes a catastrophic storm that he can no longer contain. As his companions scream for him to stop, Rid realizes with horror that the power has spiraled beyond his control. Once the chaos subsides, the gravity of the situation hits. His mentor warns him that compressing magic is far too dangerous, as such a technique could fundamentally overturn the very laws of offensive magic. The root of this explosive rage is revealed in a flash of memory. Driven by a blind, protective fury, Rid had unleashed a devastating blast upon a man who dared to threaten his family. Back in the present, the man attempts to play the victim, claiming he's being attacked by a monster. However, those around them are more shocked by the sheer, terrifying scale of Rid's hidden power. Rid's voice cracks with emotion as he screams the truth. This man threatened his mother, Mel, and everyone he holds dear. To Rid, such a betrayal of trust is utterly unforgivable. Blinded by hate, Rid lunges for a final strike, but his friends desperately hold him back. They refuse to let him fall, insisting that killing in a fit of rage is simply not like the person he has become. Allies step in to shield him from the grime of the act. They tell him there's no need for him to dirty his own hands with someone so beneath him. Then, Asuna steps forward, her blade singing as it leaves the sheath with lethal precision. With a cold, unwavering gaze, she declares she will perform the man's last rites. Absolute terror grips the man as Asuna describes a slow, agonizing dismantling of his body. As he realizes he's trapped in a nightmare, Rid can only watch in shock at Asuna's ruthless efficiency. In a sudden, brutal flash of violence, a devastating blow is struck, leaving one man screaming in agony as he's told he no longer needs his arms. Amidst the chaos, a woman watches in sheer disbelief, wondering why no one is helping her after she did exactly what she was told to provoke Rid. The atmosphere turns ice cold as a stern, elf-eared nobleman looks down on Norris with utter disgust. He is appalled that one of his own retainers would be brazen enough to threaten the family of the boy engaged to his daughter, promising a very long and unpleasant talk to follow. A gentlewoman steps forward, her eyes filled with sincerity as she offers a heartfelt apology to Rid for the actions of their countrymen. She softly urges him to calm down, while Rid remains overcome with emotion, his head bowed in distress. As the dust settles from the massive explosion of power, Rid looks up toward the sky, his voice trembling. He offers his gratitude to everyone around him, deeply apologizing for the terrifying way he lashed out in anger. The group begins to depart from the traditional estate, the wind carrying a few stray leaves through the quiet air. A young woman looks back with a startled expression, still reeling from the sheer scale of the magic she just witnessed. The nobleman is left stunned, unable to comprehend where Rid learned such destructive magic. Rid himself looks bewildered, insisting to his father that he was never taught such a spell, leaving the origin of his power a mystery. Surrounded by those who care for him, Rid is held close as he tries to process the aftermath of his fireball spell. He closes his eyes, the weight of the conflict and his own hidden strength pressing down on him. Far below the castle, in the damp darkness of the dungeons, Norris seethes in a cold stone cell. He is consumed by a toxic mix of rage and humiliation, unable to accept that he was crushed by a mere brat. This is a place of no return, a room famous for assassination and murder. Yet, despite the grim surroundings, a flicker of desperation remains in Norris's eyes. He refuses to die here, driven by some unfinished, dark ambition. The heavy iron doors creak open as His Majesty Elias enters the cell. Terrified and desperate, Norris throws himself to the floor, begging for mercy and claiming his treasonous acts were done for the good of the country under someone else's orders. In the depths of a cold dungeon, a bald dark elf clings to the last shred of hope, desperately pleading for his life. But his cries fall on deaf ears as a hooded figure delivers a sudden brutal strike that silences his desperation. The man behind the mask is Zack Riverton, and his smile is as cold as the stone walls surrounding them. With a single, devastating blow, he sends the fallen minister crashing backward, leaving him broken and breathless. Black maintains a chillingly casual demeanor, warning his companion not to be too rough. As the shell-shocked minister stares in disbelief, Zack reveals he has come to offer a final cruel explanation to the man who once served as a minister. The truth begins to unravel as Zack recounts the Balst emergency. What was publicly hailed as an alliance with the Empire was a lie. In reality, it was a humiliating surrender, turning their nation into a mere vassal state. While many nobles protested this submission, the crown saw an opportunity. The king's plan was sinisterly simple: let the dissatisfied factions grow and voice their opinions, only to gather them all in one place and eliminate them in a single sweeping stroke. The most agonizing part of the revelation hits Norris like a physical blow. He wasn't the leader of a resistance. He was the centerpiece of the trap, the perfect bait used to lure every other dissident into the open. Norris screams in denial, calling it a lie, but Zack's words cut deeper. He reminds him of the mysterious shadow who whispered that he was being used, a seed of doubt planted by the very people who were manipulating him from the start. The shadow is finally named Capella. As Zack thanks the operative for years of dedicated service, the realization sinks in for Norris. His most trusted confidant was actually his jailer. With all the facts gathered, Zack coldly announces the start of the purge. Norris's desperate pleas for the country's need for its experienced leaders are met with mockery, dismissed as the obsolete ramblings of an old man falling behind the times. The final blow comes with the mention of Rid, who had already foreseen this outcome. Shattered and defeated, Norris can only wonder just how long Capella had been lurking in his shadow, orchestrating his total downfall. The mask slips as Elias reveals the cold truth to Rheasus. Every move has been watched, every action calculated. Even the bond between father and son was nothing more than a pawn in a larger game, proving that for Elias, being a king means gambling with everything including his own blood. While some are played, others are the players. Eltia reveals her hand to Norris, mocking him for being the only one kept in the dark. With a predatory smile, she urges him to use his silver tongue for one final purpose, to provoke Baldia into a blind, uncontrollable rage. Realization hits Norris like a physical blow. He was never a partner, only a tool. Now facing the charge of high treason, Elias offers him a grim choice. Either wait for an assassin's blade tomorrow morning, or take a peaceful poison right now. A man named Zack leans in, coldly recommending the latter. And driven to the brink of madness, Norris snaps. He screams his delusions of grandeur, imagining a future where he guides the country from the shadows through races. In a desperate explosion of hate, he bellows that Elias is no true king. With a guttural roar, Norris lunges forward in a final futile attempt to tear down the man who discarded him. He throws everything into the attack, desperate to carve a path out of his own ruin, while Elias watches with utter indifference. The struggle is over in a heartbeat. With one swift, effortless swing of his blade, Elias silences the noise. Norris's eyes widen in sheer terror as the cold steel cuts through his ambitions and his life in a single flash. A hooded figure watches the carnage with clinical appreciation, praising the precision of the strike. Elias looks down at the corpse with nothing but contempt, dismissing Norris as a fool. The order is simple. Clean up the mess and hide the body until the Baldia family's visit is over. There is no dignity in this end. Elias gives a final, cruel instruction to his subordinates. Throw salt on the body. He wants the remains preserved, ensuring that the evidence of Norris's failure doesn't rot away too quickly. Under a cold full moon, the castle stands as a silent witness to a life defined by malice. In a cruel twist of irony, the man who sought power is preserved in salt, the very resource that crippled his nation. As rumors of his downfall begin to leak to the lower nobility, a mysterious figure warns that time is running out.